In the 21st year of the Salcerio calendar, a horrifying disaster struck the kingdom of John Van. The scene was soaked in bloody chaos, and the survivors began to lose their composure. Every face was filled with panic and terror, while outside, monsters surrounded humanity's final stronghold where the remaining survivors had gathered. The soldiers pushed reality aside and rallied together with a glimmer of fragile hope. Yet, the most terrifying thing had yet to appear. A roar accompanied by the ferocious beating of wings drew everyone's attention, and before them countless colossal monsters with overwhelming pressure flew in. Immediately after, a massive monster slowly gathered magical power in its mouth and launched it straight at the target of people down below. That attack was enough to wipe out everything, including the fortress's sturdy gates, which were crushed into tiny fragments. The monsters outside seized the opportunity and surged in like a raging storm, brandishing their weapons and threatening the safety of everyone inside, as their lives were snatched away more easily than anyone else's. Those gigantic monsters slowly squeezed out fragile lives bit by bit, bringing an inescapable destiny right before our eyes. They crept into every corner of the fortress, causing terrified soldiers to run for their lives in panic. Corpses of soldiers who had perished at the hands of the monsters were everywhere, but the beasts continued to hunt humans relentlessly until humanity was driven to extinction. Amidst a scene choked with smoke and fire, an anxious and urgent voice rang out. Lying nearby were soldiers who had been lucky enough to be rescued just in time, all suffering from severe injuries while those who remained intact took turns caring for them. While a soldier with a terrible complexion was being treated, the other person's hurried voice rang out once again. "That person is Will," he shouted loudly as he looked at everyone. "I'll heal you. Hurry up and bring the injured person over here." Another person was brought forward, and he quickly knelt down to cast healing magic on him while Will continually issued reminders before it was too late, prompting a subordinate nearby to step in and try to stop him. "Lord Will, the gate is about to fall, please run away." He could not hide his impatience upon seeing the approaching danger. "It's way too dangerous for an elite healer like you to be on the front lines." Hearing those words made Will furious. He turned his head and yelled right in his face. "Are you telling me to just abandon them?" He clenched his teeth tightly, acutely aware of the heavy responsibility on his shoulders, believing that as long as he kept healing, he would not let humanity go extinct. That moment made Will recall the parting advice of his parents, the messages regarding his responsibility to the world and his incredible power. "This world, everyone's lives depend on you. From now on, you are the greatest healer in the world." Suddenly, an urgent call snapped him out of his thoughts. "Lord Will? There are two people at the door looking for you." Someone shouted loudly, "Where is Lord Will?" Following the voice, he saw the majestic Grand General before him with a severed arm and a fading breath, and cried out in shock, "General!" But he quickly ordered, "Lay him down right here." As soon as he was laid down, the soldier anxiously asked Will, "Can you save the general?" "Without him, this front line will face." Will replied very quickly in a firm voice, "I will save him." Then he squatted down to channel his magic while the surrounding crowd felt an atmosphere of intense tension, and he spoke with absolute certainty, "Because that's why I'm here." Will swiftly gathered magical energy around himself and the Grand General. A blue magic circle appeared directly beneath them and flared up, producing a pillar of blue light that astonished everyone present. That source of energy enveloped the general's missing arm, gradually restoring it for him. The joints, fingers, and even the flesh that had been bitten off slowly regenerated. Once the arm was fully restored, the source of blue light gradually dissipated. The Grand General slowly opened his eyes and regained consciousness. He sat up with a completely healed arm, and the surrounding soldiers cheered in celebration. As expected of Lord Will, the general has woken up. He stared in a daze at his once severed arm, which now bore not a single wound, prompting Will to smile with relief and say, "No matter how severe the injury is, I will heal it completely. Now, humanity's victory is surely right before our eyes." The general did not reply to him and instead stared fixedly at his own hand. His pupils constricted violently. Suddenly, he threw a punch straight into Will's face, and before he could dodge, Will took the full force of the blow. Clenching his arm until it turned white, the general spoke in a frustrated voice, "You just did something entirely unnecessary." The soldiers and Will were left dumbfounded by the situation, and after taking the punch head-on, Will clutched his face and looked at him. "What? Why did you punch me?" A brave soldier spoke up, "General, what the hell are you doing?" But he looked even more furious, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Shut up!" His hand nimbly drew the sword at his waist. Seeing that action, Will was left stunned. That general used his sword to stab fiercely into Will's shoulder, causing him to scream out in agony. His frenzied expression accompanied words that terrified him, his eyes flashing with a terrifying murderous intent. "Was it this arm? Why didn't you just let me die? The general pressed the sword deeper into his shoulder, making him tremble in pain, and screamed with a voice carrying fear and despair. What the hell do you know, standing safely in the back and playing healer? You don't know our pain, the despair of facing those monsters. Blaring fiercely at Will, he kept grinding his teeth. Just when I thought it was finally over, you healed me. How many more arms are we supposed to lose? As he spoke, he pointed toward the soldiers, his voice tinged with both resentment and exhaustion. Everyone here feels the exact same way. They don't want to fight anymore. At that moment, Will cast his gaze toward the soldiers, his eyes widening in utter astonishment. All around him were wounded soldiers with not a single intact limb left. Some had broken arms, some were blind, and others lay sprawled out from exhaustion and pain. Confusion was now clearly evident on Will's face as he couldn't help mulling over the general's words. No way, I saved as many people as I possibly could. Do you mean everything I did was meaningless? A painful truth slapped him so hard across the face that physical pain meant nothing anymore, and as he realized the general's words were true, all his sweat, effort, tears, and even traveling all the way to the front lines, everything, the general finally pulled the sword out of Will's shoulder, making him grit his teeth in pain, and told him, I don't care if you're the greatest healer in the world. I've had more than enough of suffering because of you. Turning his back to leave, he left behind these words, humanity is going to perish anyway. If you want to fight, go do it yourself. Will flailingly called out to him, but his voice came out crying out, how is a healer supposed to use offensive magic? His voice cracked with fear, thinking that without him, this place would, but the general no longer cared about the life or death of humanity, and simply turned his back and walked away. At the same time, the dragon outside let out a ferocious roar. A fireball gathered in its mouth, and with a loud boom, it struck the fortress directly, destroying nearly everything. The room where Will was staying was blown to pieces, leaving collapsed walls and billowing dust. The general was pinned beneath a heavy boulder, breathing heavily as he tried to gasp for breath and crawl away. But another heavy force crushed down on him, causing him to scream in agony. In the end, everything exploded. Will opened his eyes and tried to look around, realizing the truth of the situation at that moment. The dragon from earlier landed right in front of him, flapping its wings and growling viciously, and as Will clearly saw the creature before him, he belatedly realized, is this the kind of monster the people he once saved had to face? He forced a bitter smile, his eyes filled with despair. It's true that all this time, I've only ever known how to watch from the sidelines. Will reached out to grip the wound on his shoulder, his hand shaking uncontrollably. Damn it, all that effort spent learning healing magic was a complete waste. Memories rushed back into his mind one after another, throwing him into turmoil, because despite having a natural talent for healing magic, and being hailed as the greatest healer in the world, he gritted his teeth as anger and helplessness surged within him, realizing he should have fought with his own hands instead. In that exact moment, Will picked up a nearby stone. Knowing he couldn't possibly win, he still charged forward, silently regretting deep down, if only I could go back to that day. Will lunged toward the monster, gripping the tiny stone tightly with a determined look on his face. But no miracle occurred. The dragon advanced straight toward Will, and all that remained were two words, if only. As his life was swallowed whole by the beast, those rambling thoughts drifted away, blending seamlessly with his chaotic emotions. Suddenly, Will opened his eyes once more. He bolted upright instantly, his eyes darting around his surroundings. A familiar scenery struck his eyes, involuntarily leaving him frozen in shock as he muttered, this is? He cast his gaze toward the desk beside him. At an admission guide. If this thing is here, that means, he scrambled out of bed in a hurry. Before him lay a peaceful scene where people were still chatting animatedly, making him wonder, could it be that day from a year ago? Stunned, he stood completely frozen with a blank expression, realizing he had apparently returned to the 16th year of the Salserio calendar, the very day Will, who would later become the world's greatest healer, held his admission letter, looking around in bewilderment because he should have died at the hands of a dragon. An academy specialized in training healing magic, yet this was a week before enrolling at the Highlight Academy, holding the admission paper in his hand with an exhausted voice saying, I honestly have no idea what even happened. The final fragments of memories from his past life surfaced like a reminder, but if his dying wish had been granted, then he knew precisely what he needed to do. Gripping the notification letter tightly with a determined expression, he spoke in a resolute voice, I am definitely going to enroll in Schwarz Academy, the academy specializing in offensive magic. Will stood in silence to ponder, knowing it was common knowledge to any mage that healing mages could not use offensive magic, but he was determined to shatter that stereotype. There would undoubtedly be countless barriers he needed to overcome, and the memories of his past life flooded back into his mind again, but since he still retained those memories along with the master-level healing magic he had mastered back then, making full use of them would surely allow him to change the future. With determination and steadfastness, he quickly set a goal for himself, his eyes flashing with certainty, to rely on his own strength and save this world. To kick off his plan, the first step Will thought of was school, meaning he absolutely had to enroll in Schwarz Academy, the world's most prestigious institution for offensive magic training. There was a vast amount Will could learn at Schwarz Academy. Schwarz's superior training curriculum was said to be capable of turning anyone into a true combat mage. The person he met in his past life also hailed from Schwarz. However, he realized their methods were a closely guarded secret, learnable only by entering the academy itself. The biggest issue bothering Will was his identity as a healer. Closing his eyes to think, he figured there had probably never been a precedent of a healer enrolling, so what should he do now? Then an idea suddenly popped into his head. Money could train anyone into a top-tier combat mage, and he had heard that nobles occasionally used money to buy their incompetent kids into the school. But that thought was instantly crushed since he had just reincarnated, so where on earth was he supposed to get that much money? Looking around the room, he said regretfully, if only I could have brought my money back from the past life. Even though money is useless in times of leisure, the reward money from when I worked for the kingdom would have been enough to live on for the rest of my life. Realizing he had hit a dead end, he grew even more anxious, thinking that no matter what kind of work he took up, he wouldn't make it in time for admissions, so he needed to think of something fast. Suddenly, a gentle voice called out to him, Will, are you awake yet? A beautiful girl walked in, flashing a smile toward him that left him utterly astonished. Sister! Tears suddenly welled up in his eyes as he subconsciously stared at her for a little longer, remembering that he had returned to the past, and at this moment, she was still alive. Seeing him like that, she asked in surprise, what's wrong? Do you have a stomachache? Will flailingly raised his hand and hurriedly explained, no, I just got some dust in my eye. Good morning, sis. Hearing that, she replied with a sweet smile, good morning. Staring at her for quite a while, a new thought began to brew in his mind. In this lifetime, he would definitely prevent the tragedy from happening to her. Using his healing magic, he could save those he previously failed to save. Suddenly he cried out, that's it. Will was so thrilled he grinned from ear to ear, grabbing her hand and laughing foolishly as he said, thank you so much. Thanks to you, I've figured out a solution. Her reaction was pure bewilderment as she asked, what is it? But Will didn't explain, just hurriedly rushing off while leaving behind a sentence, I'm heading out for a bit, I'll tell you all about it when I get back, to which she sighed helplessly, good grief, remember to come back for dinner. The Magic Academy Alliance, an organization overseeing the kingdom's magic academies and making all decisions related to magical education. At that time, the president of the alliance was concurrently serving as the principal of Schwarz Academy. However, starting from a certain point, the president stopped showing up at the alliance because he had relocated to a massive castle. With moonlight shining in, Alnaram was sitting beside Marie's bed. Her face was flushed red from a high fever. He reached out to touch Marie's uncomfortable face. His gaze contained both deep worry and gentleness as he whispered, Marie. He was Alnaram Goldgran, president of the Magic Academy Alliance and principal of Schwarz Academy, and Alnaram's expression turned bitterly sorrowful as he said, I'm sorry, even today the healer's skill wasn't good enough. But I will definitely find someone who can cure your illness, so please just hang in there a little longer. Back then, the esteemed principal always had to stay by the bedside to care for his gravely ill granddaughter. Yet the healing magic of that era could not cure her, and eventually, the little girl passed away. He sat by Marie's bedside and sobbed, but that was a story from his past life. Yikes! Will leaped onto the windowsill and spoke up, just leave it to me, alright? Looking at the strange young man, he asked suspiciously, who are you? Alnaram then recognized him, if I recall correctly, you are Will, the scholarship student from Hylet, correct? As he vaulted inward from the window, asking, you've heard of me too? Raising his hand to explain, Alnaram said, your talent for healing magic has already made quite a name across the alliance. Though I didn't expect you to be the type to climb through windows into people's houses. Hearing that, Will raised his hand to scratch the back of his head sheepishly, thinking to himself, the past me definitely never would have done this. I guess dying once really made me a lot bolder. Will cut straight to the point and stated, there's no time left for her, nor for me either. Stretching his hand out toward Marie with utmost confidence, he declared, I can cure her. Alnaram looked at him with suspicious and guarded eyes, asking, what are you plotting? Reaching his hand out anxiously, Will replied, we can talk about that later. Please, let me heal her first, the disease has progressed further than I expected. His gaze was filled with worry and determination as he met Alnaram's scrutinizing look. He agreed, causing Will to heave a sigh of relief as Alnaram said, "Fine then, let's see what you can do." The two of them sat opposite each other by Marie's bedside. Will's face looked somewhat tense as he gazed across from him. Alnaram was looking at him with an extremely critical gaze, what a genuinely terrifying look, as if he was ready to send him off to the afterlife right then and there if he made the slightest mistake, truly living up to the prestige of a combat magic academy principal. Will took a deep breath to regain his composure, and slowly and carefully took Marie's hand. A surge of healing light radiated outward, blanketing the entire room. Concentrating intensely on casting his magic, Will thought, "My magical power has decreased since returning, but I still clearly remember the healing magic formulas." Seeing Marie's complexion gradually improving, he noted that the treatment formula for Zora's disease in this child wasn't supposed to be invented for another 2 years. But with his current capabilities, she slowly and gradually opened her eyes. Will let out a breath of relief and said, "Thank goodness." A radiant smile broke across his face as he told her, "You're going to be fine now." Blushing involuntarily at his handsome face, she listened as he added, "Your stamina is still low though, so just rest up." Turning her face away shyly, she answered, "Yes." Alnaram anxiously asked, "Marie, do you really feel well?" Wearing a joyful smile, Marie replied, "Yes, grandfather, I can't even remember how many years it's been since I felt this healthy." His eyes glistened with tears as he looked at her with boundless affection. Leaning over, he stroked the top of her head and said, "I understand." Bright moonlight shone through the window. Thank goodness. Shifting scenes, Alnaram was sitting and discussing matters in the living room. "Thank you, Will. If there is anything at all I can do, I will help with all my might." Without hesitation, Will spoke up, "Thank you very much. This isn't a request though." Laying out his demand, he said, "As you can see, my healing magic has already reached a master level. I have nothing left to learn in this field." Placing his hand over his chest with a clear expression, he stated, "Therefore, please let me enroll in Schwarz Academy." Looking slightly troubled, Alnaram asked back, "You want to enter a combat magic academy instead of utilizing your healing talent? Do you understand what that means?" Unflinchingly, Will replied, "Of course I understand." Alnaram stared into Will's ambitious eyes. That look, he suddenly stood up, catching Will by surprise. "Perhaps my authority exists precisely for this very day." Looking at Will's determined face, he voiced, "I will make it happen." The two of them stood up and shook hands as Alnaram declared, "I approve your enrollment." Will gripped his hand tightly, filled with absolute firmness. Shifting scenes to a room, a man was talking to himself, "That damn crafty old fox, I thought he just suddenly returned, but to think he'd pull off something this insane." Picking up a piece of paper, he read, "A healer demanding to keep up with Schwarz's curriculum? That kind of pampered healer." That very paper was Will's admission form proposed by him. On opening day, throngs of students stood in the middle of the school courtyard. Standing on the podium with a solemn expression was Alnaram. Schwarz Academy, a unique boarding school exclusively focused on combat magic, featured a vast campus with countless training grounds and laboratories, and even possessed a colossal library. Its alumni held immense influence outside the academy, and it received full backing from the kingdom. There was simply no better environment to study combat magic. Since no healer had ever enrolled before, countless difficulties would surely await him, but studying here brought Will hope. He could become a combat mage too. The deaths of friends and comrades, memories from his past life surfaced, and finally, his own death right in this very place. Now, a new chapter of his life began, taking his destiny into his own hands. After enrolling, during class, Will's expression was utterly grim, completely contrasting with his earlier bright demeanor. The professor standing nearby shouted, "Begin," as he raised his hand toward the scarecrow and answered, "Yes." A magic circle manifested before his palm, and flames poured out along with it. Feeling that the magic had gathered, Will let out a loud shout. Yet the flames were not unleashed as expected. There was nothing but smoke swirling around his palm. In stark contrast to the mockery from the other students, the professor calmly remarked, "You failed again today." Then he sternly handed down a punishment, "Until you can blast that target to pieces with basic combat magic, don't even think about coming back to class. Go out to the training field behind the building and practice on your own." Hearing that, he protested loudly with dissatisfaction, "Sir, can't you teach me how to do it right? At this rate, I have no idea how to practice." Pushing up his glasses, the man coldly stated, "Teaching a mere healer is just a waste of time." Even so, Will refused to give up, offering an alternative, "Then at least allow me to study theory in the library." Maintaining a dismissive attitude, the person replied, "There are no books for healers here. violating orders will get you punished. While the two of them were arguing back and forth, someone summoned fire magic and smirked. That person threw the flame right at his back, yelling, "Get out of the way!" Will crashed face first onto the ground. Striving to prop up his trembling body, he asked, "What the hell was that?" only to be met with contempt from the culprit. "Couldn't even dodge that?" Ulpus wore a smug smile as he offered a lesson. "This is a combat magic academy. There's no room here for weaklings who can't even protect themselves." Lowering his head with a disdainful look, he warned, "In other words, getting hit is entirely your own fault, leaving Will stunned for a split second." The professor mockingly continued, and Ulpus chimed in, "That's right, wouldn't it be better if you just crawled over to the Healing Magic Academy instead?" Seeing him agree with his sentiment, Ulpus's attitude grew even more arrogant as he added, "Go in there and let those gentle healers comfort you." Amidst his jeering laughter, Will simply fell silent and frowned uncomfortably. Late in the evening on the training grounds, Will sat on a bench and let out a heavy sigh. Raising his head, he muttered to himself, "There's still zero sign that I can learn combat magic." Will wasn't overly surprised by this situation, knowing right from the start that it would be difficult, primarily because healing magic and combat magic utilized entirely different sources of power. Magic converters channel the user's mental energy through formulas to activate magic, and the nature of that mana is determined by their state of mind. Offensive magic uses active mana to create fire or cause explosions, meaning healers with only passive mana cannot use it at all. However, Schwarz holds a secret for training top-tier offensive mages completely from scratch, which surely must include a way to train active mana. I'm quite confident in my mana control, so when I first learned about that technique, I figured it would let me convert my passive mana into active mana. But thinking back to the scene this afternoon, he felt a bit helpless and thought, I never expected I wouldn't even be allowed into the classroom. Did both the students and teachers really look down on healers to this extent? Then he suddenly jumped to his feet and blurted out, "I can't just give up." The back of that young woman's figure flashed through his mind, the one who said her mana had also been scarce at first before she forged it here at Schwarz, proving that choosing to come to Schwarz was definitely the right decision. Will rested his chin in his hand and started plotting a plan, realizing that blindly crashing forward like this was pointless anyway. "I'm still not allowed in the library, so maybe I should just sneak in?" Suddenly, someone yelled out, "Hey you, what are you still doing out here at this hour?" causing him to jump in fright and stammer in a hurry, "I'm sorry." Will rubbed the back of his head with an embarrassed look and turned around. His eyes suddenly widened in astonishment. A breeze swept by, and the sound of boots echoed through the quiet space. Her blue eyes peeked out from behind her white hair. Finally, her appearance was revealed in the moonlight. He stood there frozen in a daze, calling out Veronica's name. How did he know her? Because in his past life, he had fought side by side with Veronica on the battlefield, where she used to be a top-tier offensive mage. And in the end, they had both had to bid each other a painful farewell. Will felt a wave of joy swell in his chest, astounded to meet her again in this lifetime. The nostalgia was overwhelming, especially remembering how her magic sword could cleave anything in the blink of an eye. Right as he thought that, he panicked and yelled out at the sudden situation, "Wait, is she drawing her sword?" Hearing that, Veronica naturally replied, "There's a suspicious student hanging around here, so of course I have to be on guard." She began interrogating him, "What are you doing here? Are you looking for trouble, or are you just practicing?" Deep down, Will quickly calculated that she was nothing like those bullies, and he absolutely couldn't afford to get beaten up, so he frantically waved his hands and said, "I'm just practicing." That was when Veronica finally sheathed her sword and said, "Good." Then the two of them started talking back and forth. "You're Veronica, right?" "That's me," she replied, before adding a warning, "Do you always address your teachers so casually?" He instinctively apologized first before realizing, "I'm sorry, a teacher?" In his past life, she wasn't much older than him anyway. Noticing the suspicious look on his face, Veronica had no choice but to explain, "I skipped several grades and became a teacher right after, starting this year." Will scratched his cheek and replied, "I see," while thinking to himself, "Professor Veronica, well, given her talent, that makes total sense." A look of determination flashed in his eyes, knowing this was his golden opportunity. After all, Will wanted her to teach him offensive magic, but he had no idea whether this plan would actually work. He decisively blurted out his request, "I want to enroll in your class." "Professor Veronica, what do I need to do to join?" Veronica placed a hand over her chest and politely refused, "Sorry, but I haven't been assigned to teach any regular classes yet since I've always skipped grades, so I rarely attend normal classes. This year I'm working as a teaching assistant to answer student questions, because they thought students would feel more comfortable talking to someone their own age." She added that she was still baffled as to why nobody ever came to ask her anything, which made Will force an awkward smile to brush it off. He knew full well that they didn't dare ask because everyone was probably terrified of how quickly she drew her sword, but this actually made it an even better opportunity for him to freely ask for her guidance. Thinking about it that way, Will felt even more motivated.
Can I ask you something then? Veronica calmly accepted. Sure, that's my job anyway. He asked his question with a serious expression. I'll cut straight to the point. What does a healer need to do to master offensive magic? She fell silent as if mulling over the answer.
A sharp glint suddenly flashed in her eyes.
I noticed something strange about your mana flow as well. Turns out you're that freshman everyone's been gossiping about, huh?
Will was quite surprised that someone like Veronica knew about him.
You know about me too?
I know because it's extremely rare for a healer to study offensive magic. I've never heard of any such teacher doing that. He steered the conversation back to the main point, but I heard Schwarz has a method to refine active mana from scratch, and if that method really exists, even I should be able to use active mana.
Veronica turned her head away and delivered the good news. That method does exist, and I can teach it to you. Naturally, Will grew happier and said, really?
Then, but she continued, though Veronica felt she needed to explain things more clearly, it's still impossible for you to use offensive magic.
The amount of passive mana inside your body is simply too vast.
At this level, even if you manage to refine active mana, it will just dissolve into that pile of passive mana, and even if you use another method to refine active mana, once it mixes with the passive mana, the offensive magic formulas won't be able to function properly. Unwilling to accept that, he pressed on, no way, is there really no way for a healer to use offensive magic, and received the reply, not as far as I know. Such a promising option had just been discarded, putting him in a terrible mood as he thought, damn it, my plan is ruined, but I can't give up here. If there's no way, I'll just have to make one myself. Yet he soon put on a calm smile to say goodbye. Thank you very much, I'll think more about this on my own. But just as he turned to leave, she suddenly spoke up, hold on, I'm not finished yet. It's true that healers can't use offensive magic, but there is still a way for a healer to become an offensive mage.
Will felt a bit confused and immediately asked, sorry, what do you mean?
Veronica gave an example. This is an iron sword. If you swing it, you can cut down and defeat an enemy. Her hand brushed across the back of a chair before suddenly posing a hypothetical scenario. And this is a wooden chair, you sit on it.
Not understanding much, he still replied, yes.
To his surprise, Veronica lifted the chair effortlessly and said, but even this chair, if you swing it and use it to bash someone, you can knock them down too, right?
That left Will terrified inward, thinking, with these skinny arms of mine?
Setting the chair back down, she continued her lesson. You don't think of using it that way because it was made for a different purpose, but you have the freedom to use it however you want.
These hands are the same way.
Veronica gently stroked his flushed cheeks, saying, I can gently pet your head like this. Her fingers lightly caressed his lips, before flicking his forehead with absolute decisiveness, or I can cause you pain.
Seeing Will's violent reaction, she asked curiously, sorry, was I a bit too rough?
He replied in pain, it's fine. She finally concluded, it's all about how you use it. Anything can become a weapon depending on how you use it.
Will seemed to realize something. You mean using healing magic to attack?
She nodded, satisfied with his quick grasp of the lesson. A teacher answers when a student asks, it's strange how you never thought of that until I said it, which is just due to the nature of mindset and the difference in innate mana volume.
That's why offensive mages have no interest in healing magic, and vice versa. But you might be different.
The fact that you actively enrolled in the Magic Academy for attack proves you're an exception. In reality, your mana isn't like that of a pure healer at all.
Hearing that, he looked down at his palms in deep thought, thinking, not like one?
Even I didn't realize that, but could it be because I was resurrected? Veronica drew her sword and placed it right against Will's neck, saying, you need to face it head-on. Veronica's words carried a fierce seriousness and an intense craving for battle hidden deep within her.
If you can do that, your healing magic will definitely crush any enemy. Time gradually slipped away after such an evening tutoring session.
The next day, while standing on the training grounds, he couldn't help but remember everything Professor Veronica had said last night. Her way of giving examples was truly eccentric, but it felt as though he had just been enlightened.
And why did Professor Veronica have no animosity toward healers?
It was so strange that she held a theory bridging healers and offensive magic. It felt just like when that professor rudely nicknamed him the healer. Will muttered bitterly to himself, they don't even bother calling me by my name anymore. Glancing at the roster, the professor announced, today's class will be one-on-one sparring matches. Since our class has an odd number of students, you'll be participating as well. He could only listen helplessly as the professor added, the fact that you can't use offensive magic is your own problem.
so no matter what the outcome is, you brought it upon yourself. The corners of the professor's mouth curled up into a sinister smile as he stated, I've already paired everyone up. Your match will be against Ulpus. Hearing the other man's amused chuckle, Will didn't get angry at all, thinking, that's such an obvious setup. A sharp glint flashed in his eyes as he looked toward his current opponent. Ulpus Omen was rumored to be the scion of a prestigious noble family, always surrounded by a flock of sycophants. From what he had observed in class, this guy actually possessed the real combat strength of an offensive mage, rather than just coasting on his family name. Ulpus flashed his usual contemptuous attitude, healing magic can't heal humiliation, can it? After I beat you to a pulp, are you going to run home and cry to your mommy? Confronted with such malicious words, the corners of Will's mouth twitched in annoyance, thinking, that kind of attitude. If it were me in my past life, I probably wouldn't have cared much, but I have to admit this guy is seriously getting on my nerves. Plus, I want to test out Professor Veronica's hypothesis from yesterday, so I guess I'll retaliate a little bit, leading him to raise his hand and call out, Professor, since he thinks that way, I definitely won't accept giving up either. With a hint of amusement in his tone, he said, Give up? No way. I just have a small proposal. Thinking to himself, I get it, I'm not suited for offensive magic, and like you said, keeping this up is just a waste of time, so if I lose this match, Will made a shocking declaration, I'll quit studying at Schwarz. The professor wasn't surprised at all, instead, he praised the decision, a wise choice. But Will wasn't finished yet. In exchange, if I win, will you allow me to join the regular classes? The professor's previous cheerful mood vanished instantly as he snapped, Don't get ahead of yourself. But Ulpus laughed with great amusement and agreed, Fine by me. A weakling demanding to fight someone strong has to cling to delusional fantasies to comfort himself when facing fear, and I guess this weak little brat needs that. Besides, it wouldn't be fun if there was nothing to crush. With no other choice, the professor had to accept Will's proposal, since arguing about those impossible hypotheses was just a waste of time anyway, so he stated, Very well. He raised both hands to the sides and shouted, Both of you, take your positions. Then he raised his hand to signal the start of the match. Begin. A surge of magical energy radiated from Ulpus's entire body. As the magic circle appeared, daggers materialized right along with it. He was extremely proud of this technique of his, boasting, Look closely, this is my crafted magic. The countless blades I create will skewer you to death. Screaming at the top of his lungs, Ulpus launched the daggers forward, shouting, What good is a good-for-nothing who can't even use basic offensive magic? Facing the incoming danger, Will calmly pressed his fingertips together. A magic circle formed between his hands, and his eyes tinged with a blue hue accordingly. Will calmly dodged the approaching daggers. Seeing his opponent effortlessly dodge them, Ulpus gasped in disbelief. What? The essence of my healing magic is manipulating life, rationally controlling the living activities of a target, and healing them by maximizing their recovery capabilities, but recovery isn't the only thing I can manipulate. If I convert it into an attack form, Ulpus assumed Will had only dodged out of pure luck and immediately got arrogant. Will didn't bother to retort, silently adjusting his magic power to reinforce his physical body. His hand grabbed an incoming flying dagger, and he used magic to alter its flight trajectory. Just like that, the daggers clattered to the ground from the impact, though a single dagger remained in Will's hand. Right on time. The blade gleamed under the sunlight with an expression of supreme confidence as he said, I'll borrow this for a moment. The sudden turnaround caught everyone off guard, prompting gasps like, What? What just happened? Is that offensive magic? I thought he only knew how to use healing magic. Will mentally corrected them, it's not offensive magic, he's using healing magic to attack, though it seems people can't really tell the difference. The most irritated person right now was definitely Ulpus. Summoning more daggers, Ulpus made excuses, I was just holding back a moment ago, the number can still increase. There was no way an offensive mage could lose to a healer. Will easily used his dagger to block the other incoming blades, shattering them completely to pieces. Ulpus grew increasingly unhinged, thinking, it's not just about quantity anymore. The dagger transformed into a massive, gigantic sword. Seeing this, Will calmly evaluated him, he's quite strong, his grasp of specialized magic is remarkably high. Adding another skill to his repertoire, Ulpus yelled, Now I'm adding rotation to it as well. Ulpus was utterly confident in this technique. How do you like this? With this move, Will simply raised his small dagger gently to block the tip of the spinning giant blade. That scene was simply too unbelievable for Ulpus to comprehend. Ulpus gritted his teeth furiously, pouring every ounce of his magic power into his sword. Meanwhile, Will wondered if he should boost his physical reinforcement just a little bit more. The moment he thought that, he swung and batted the gigantic sword high up into the sky. As the sword slammed into the ground, Ulpus's frustrated voice rang out, "No way!" In the blink of an eye, Will appeared right behind him with a smile, saying, "I'll heal your injuries properly, so please forgive me." The tip of the blade flashed with light from the sun, but something suddenly obstructed his vision as someone shouted loudly, "That's enough!" Will quickly backed away while Ulpus collapsed onto the ground in sheer terror. A massive boulder suddenly materialized right in the middle of the training ground. The professor's voice trembled slightly, "There's another match coming up, you two stop fighting." The two of them stared fixedly at each other. Then Will cheerfully reiterated his previous condition, "I can participate in regular classes from now on, right?" Extremely displeased, the professor let out a cold snort and said, "Do whatever you want." Having achieved his goal, Will flashed a bright, radiant smile, "Thank you very much, Professor." And with that, he walked out of the ongoing class. "Then please excuse me." Walking off in a certain direction, Will pondered, "That feeling just now. This is my own unique style of offensive magic, and it's far more effective than I expected, allowing me to defeat a talented offensive mage of my own age. Thanks to Professor Veronica, I can use healing magic to attack. My plan has finally succeeded." The flag bearing the school's emblem fluttered proudly in the wind. Over on the other side, Ulpus struggled to suppress his anger as he muttered, "Professor, that was just an accident during class, it's fine, and besides, I don't want to report the most serious matters to my father." The professor was left speechless. A malicious glint flashed in Ulpus's eyes as he asked, "You understand what I'm saying, right?" Out of habit, the professor pushed his glasses up his nose. "Of course I understand." The corners of his mouth twitched into a sinister smile as he thought, "We can't let a mere healer act so cocky." Inside a classroom packed with many students, Will felt a slight nervous flutter as he thought, "I'm finally in a real class, and I'm going to learn everything about offensive magic." As the door swung open, it immediately drew the gazes of the students. The person walking in happened to be a familiar face, who merely cast a glance their way before walking past. The professor stepped up to the podium and began speaking, "All right, let's start today's lesson on crafting magical tools. Since it's the beginning of the semester, the material is still basic, and the homeroom teacher will handle multiple subjects at once." Today's lecture is crafting magical tools again? The Healing Magic Academy had similar classes, he thought with a nostalgic, quiet chuckle. Sketching on the board to make things clearer, the instructor said, "Today we'll be crafting bombs. I'll hand out the materials, so just assemble them according to the steps and remember to channel your mana into them. In my past life, I only ever made recovery items like potions. As expected of an offensive magic academy, they make weapons instead. They probably assume I'll use active mana, but the nature of mana is crucial when crafting tools, and most of the functionality relies heavily on the materials anyway." Thinking that as he opened his pouch, Will figured he probably still needed to sit through this class. Inside were two items, a fragment of an ice golem's eye and fire branch powder. He tried opening his textbook to check their information, muttering, "Let's see here, mix the fire branch powder with the ice golem eye fragment." Suddenly, the ice golem eye fragment emitted a strange magical wave that instantly caught Will's attention, prompting him to react without a moment's hesitation. He immediately leaped to his feet and used physical reinforcement to fling the fragment away. An explosion rocked the classroom right then and there. A massive chunk of ice materialized across the wall. The initial panic slowly subsided. The professor's furious voice echoed out, "Hey you there, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Will tried to regain his composure to explain, "No, it activated itself before I even had a chance to channel my mana." But of course the professor wouldn't let it slide, stating begrudgingly, "I'm deducting points from you." A sound suddenly echoed from behind his back. Turning his head, he saw Ulpus's group sneering at him mockingly. Golden eyes flashed in the dim light, as if sensing that something strange was going on here. When the next class rolled around, a beast locked inside a cage sat right on his desk for a lecture on mythical creatures, featuring a newly hatched salamander. The beast and the human stared intently at one another. Will was the only one sitting at a desk in the front row, simply because students with low grades got pushed to sit up front. Time to focus properly. His entire body stiffened up. Being this close to a salamander made it look as though it was trembling violently. His entire body stiffened up, and being this close to a salamander made it look as though it was trembling violently. The puzzled professor interrogated him, "Why did you bring a frying pan with you?" "Well, I thought," Will replied with confidence, "there might come a time when I need it." But the professor walked right up and confiscated it. Seeing the caged beast inch closer, Will leaned his upper body backward while thinking with absolute certainty, "So that's how it is. They let me into the classroom, but they never had any intention of letting me study properly. Now what should I do?" In the corner of the room, a student sat in a rather tense posture. She looked quite anxious as she cast glances at him. Afterward, the harassment continued unabated in the training grounds. Ulpus blasted fire toward Will, dismissing it afterward with the excuse that his hand had slipped. Next came class time. The professor ordered, "Now, solve this problem." He replied, "Yes. I haven't learned this part yet." The instructor immediately used that as an excuse to bully him. "Not being prepared is your fault." Points deducted. Even outside the classroom, trash from barrier magic was littered right in front of his door. Hearing the news, the dormitory manager also stepped in to punish him. "I heard you had a bad attitude during class, so your punishment is losing dinner." This prompted Will to grumble, "This is way too unfair." Back at the academy dormitory, inside Will's room, he wearily lay down on his bed. "Everyone in the academy is hostile toward me. Just the first few days and I've already run into a mountain of obstacles. There's still a whole world of challenges ahead." Will raised his hand, thinking with fierce determination, "I'm still improving every single day. I can't let this bullying break my spirit forever." Memories of that match flashed back before his eyes. Above all, it was the first time he had fought with his own hands and won. A glimmer of hope always remained alive in his heart. "I can become an attack mage." After psyching himself up, Will sat up to study. "I finally have the textbook. Time to review today's lesson." The next day, the classroom was pathetically empty. Glancing at the clock again, he felt a bit strange. It was already time, yet there was still no sign of the teacher. Faced with this bizarre situation, Will instinctively surveyed his surroundings. "Aside from me, there's only that girl left. It looks like they deliberately changed classrooms without even bothering to tell us." Left with no other choice, he stood up. There was no point in staying here any longer. As he cautiously tried to strike up a conversation with the young woman, she jumped in surprise. Will scratched his cheek and voiced his guess, "Could it be that we changed classrooms for this next period?" Erica lowered her head and agreed, "I think so too." Her next words caught his attention, "Because there are only two of us here. Both the teacher and everyone else cancelled, so I kind of figured out what happened." A gloomy aura radiated from her entire body, almost as if mold were growing right off her skin. "I guess I'm in the same boat as you then." Erica's tone carried a slumped, listless vibe. "Since we're both outcasts, we might as well be friends." Will was slightly surprised, silently appraising his classmate. "She looks gloomy, but she's got some bite to her words." Then he reached out his hand with a bright smile. "Anyway, I'm really glad to make a new friend." "Nice to meet you." She let out an exclamation of genuine refreshment. "How invigorating." She immediately stood up and grabbed his hand. "I look forward to your help." It was the young woman's turn to introduce herself. "My name is Erica Glenn." Will scratched his head, looking a bit embarrassed as he said, "Erica is my very first friend at this academy." Erica politely waved her hands dismissively and replied, "That's to be expected, Will. You hardly ever show up for class, and on top of that, you're a healer. Everyone says the exact same thing. Healers are just total weaklings." Hearing that, his whole body suddenly froze. She gave a self-deprecating bitter smile and added, "And look at me. I attend classes regularly and I'm a full-fledged attack mage, yet I don't have a single friend either." Will mulled over her previous words, pushing her personality aside. The prejudice against healers is truly deeply ingrained in people's minds. Attack mages, who specialize in frontline combat and achieving glorious merits, tend to look down on healers. In his past life, he had been recognized as the kingdom's healer early on, so he had never experienced this kind of discrimination. But at an academy dedicated to attack magic, that attitude was fiercely hostile. Studying here meant he had to fight back against that discrimination as well. She hesitated for a moment, but finally asked the question on her mind, "Why did you come to Schwarz?" Will echoed her question, repeating it softly, "You're asking why?" The answer had been ready for a long time, so he spoke straight out without a second thought, "Because I was born a healer." I realized that isn't an excuse for me to give up. But Erica tilted her head in confusion, not quite understanding. He could only offer a wry smile and speak generally, "I have my own reasons." "What about you?" "Erica, why are you here?" Not expecting to be asked in return, she answered with a bit of flustered hesitation. "As for me, I come from a minor noble family out in the provinces, but since we didn't have any sons, my parents kept worrying our lineage would die out. So they thought if I could make a name for myself as an attack mage, I could take over as female head of the family." This reasoning wasn't too hard to understand. "I see. Graduating from Schwarz will definitely help you pull that off." Erica spoke of her inner worries with a melancholic tone. "The trouble is, I have practically zero talent for attack magic. Because of that, I don't have any friends, and attending class feels like absolute torture. To put it bluntly, it couldn't possibly be worse. But right after, she cheerfully clapped her hands together. But now I've got a friend. Although she was wearing a blindingly bright smile, the content of her words wasn't sunny at all. With Will here, someone who's even worse off than me, I don't have to worry anymore. Even though my grades are scraping the bottom, Will thought arrogantly, what on earth makes her say something like that with such a beaming face? The two of them continued chatting in a friendly manner. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. Thanks, I know you mean well. As he turned away, he chuckled and warned, things probably won't turn out the way you think, Erica. It was an ambiguous statement, but the foolish girl didn't understand a single thing. What's that supposed to mean? But Will didn't answer Erica's confusion. Come on, let's go find the classroom. The two of them stepped outside together. Wait for me. After a bit of searching, the two of them finally stepped into the correct room. Here it is, we finally found it. As soon as they entered the classroom, the professor immediately started scolding them, you're late. Just how long ago did this class start? Amidst the mockery of everyone around them, the two of them spoke in unison, I'm sorry, we didn't know the room was changed. But of course, the guy wasn't going to let it slide just like that. No excuses whatsoever. Seeming to think of something, the corners of the professor's mouth curled up into a smirk. He pointed at the extremely complex diagram drawn on the blackboard. Solve this. Seeing that, Erica couldn't help feeling a wave of injustice in her heart. This isn't fair. We just got here, how could we possibly know? Especially since Will misses so many classes. Meanwhile, Will just stared thoughtfully up at the board without any reaction. The professor added a condition, if you solve it correctly, I'll overlook your tardiness. Naturally, if you get it wrong, you'll lose points. Sitting in the back, Ulpus rested his chin on his hand and sneered, at this rate, he's going to flunk this subject in no time. Unexpectedly, this time he actually picked up a piece of chalk. The tapping sound of chalk against the board echoed through the room. The characters kept writing across the board without a single pause, leaving Erica utterly dumbfounded. As for him, he assumed, there's no way he isn't just guessing randomly, right? It's completely useless. Finally, after a short while, the chalk stopped moving. The magic circle they had solved began to glow with a soft, gentle light. Will's voice carried a hint of smug triumph as he asked, how's that, Professor? Unable to believe his eyes, the man pressed his face right up against the board. The professor's eyes widened in sheer astonishment. After checking it over for a moment, he was forced to admit, correct. Take your seat. Ulpus was the one who reacted most violently. What? As soon as he sat down at his desk, Erica genuinely wondered why, and looked over at the person wearing an utterly smug grin. Will, how on earth did you solve that? After class, taking advantage of the recess, she slid her chair closer and called out, Will. The curiosity she had been holding back since earlier was finally unleashed. Hey, how did you solve that problem? Will recalled what had just happened and replied, how did I solve it? It looked complicated, but it's actually just applying the examples from the textbook. I just read ahead in the book, that's all. Hearing that, Erica's eyes widened in shock as she yelled, what? She slammed her hand down hard on the desk, asking in disbelief, you read the textbook all by yourself? Seeing her rather intense reaction caused him to instinctively shrink back. Yeah, because it's pretty simple. I only read it for the first time yesterday. But Schwar's curriculum truly lives up to its reputation as the #1 magic academy in the world. The knowledge is covered very effectively, systematically organizing everything from basics to advanced levels. If you master this, it's easy to far surpass the skill level of an average attack mage. Even so, if you don't have an aptitude for magic, just reading it would still be tough. Since I was already good at studying in my past life, that mindset and knowledge helped me pick up attack magic pretty quickly. Listening to that, a complex wave of emotions surged within Erica's heart. A healer can actually do that? Will, who on earth are you? The greatest former healer in the world. While she was shivering from whatever thoughts crossed her mind, Will was still nodding approvingly at his own diligent study habits. Learning attack magic is genuinely fascinating. That's why I stayed up late reading ahead. Erica's face turned completely pale. The material was terrifyingly difficult, the kind that was supposed to require a teacher's guidance just to read. Will, I thought you were a hopeless student. With that assumption, she grabbed onto his sleeve and cried, could I be the bottom feeder of the class? Am I going to get bullied? Oh God, don't leave me behind. He gently placed a hand on Erika's shoulder to comfort her. It's fine. I'll teach you everything you don't understand. Will's entire body seemed to be radiating a sparkling aura. We're friends, aren't we? Hearing that, her mood improved drastically. Thank you so much, Will. Just after speaking so sweetly, he thought maliciously to himself, of course I didn't come to this school to make friends, but having someone to help me out means I can get a lot more things done. Will casually offered a reciprocal suggestion, can you help me with something? After all, classes aren't just about theory. Calming down a little bit, Erika remembered, next up is basic attack magic class.
Images of that training ground flashed through his mind again.
Alright, the subject I always fail. The reason he got kicked out of all his classes, she now assumed, but you can probably do it now, right? You even took down that salamander. He had to be honest with her, I can't. Seriously. I still can't use basic attack magic. Hearing that, she grew a bit anxious. Clenching his fist tightly, Will spoke with positive determination, but I have a way. Shifting the focus to the person next to him, that's why I need your help.
Out on the training grounds, the students lined up neatly in rows. Standing there, he recalled the basic knowledge he had acquired. In attack magic, there is basic magic and specialized magic. Basic attack magic was created so that anyone could use it simply by analyzing the formula. You just memorize the formula and you can use it. The image of Ulpus using magic popped into his mind as an example. Meanwhile, magic that only a specific individual could use was called specialized magic. Even in Schwar's curriculum, they separated classes into basic attack magic and sessions to train each person's unique specialized magic.
Since the latter didn't have any standard answer key, he could even participate by using healing magic to attack.
Lost in thought, the homeroom professor was already standing right in front of Will. But regarding the former, if you couldn't use basic attack magic, there was no way you'd pass the course. This time, the guy looked quite confident. Theory seems fine and dandy, but practice is a whole different story. You'll fail this subject if you can't use basic attack magic.
Will didn't argue back, just replied calmly, yes, sir. The professor led him over to the scarecrow in the distance, running the same old test as always, used the basic attack magic fireball to create a ball of fire and hit that target. Crossing his arms, the man sneered as he gave a reminder, let me repeat once more, this is the absolute basics of the basics. If you can't even do this, I can't let you pass or graduate. The professor's eyes narrowed as he recalled that match. I saw you use healing magic during the sparring match the other day. I also heard that the body moves more flexibly after being healed. Yet you can't even cast a single basic attack magic spell. A good-for-nothing like you should get the hell out of my class right now. That expression was caught by the professor. Was he just smiling? Light mixed with red and orange cast a glow over his eyes, which widened in utter shock, because right at that moment, a flame had appeared in the palm of his hand. What? Why can you use magic? While everyone else was whispering and gossiping about the incident, the culprit behind the attention chuckled to himself, nice. They didn't notice. Flashing back briefly to earlier in the lesson, his proposal at the time was asking Erika to create a fireball using basic attack magic, and then channeling it into the salamander's tail. Without knowing how the salamander's tail, the way the flame appeared was that he hid it in his hand while continuously casting healing magic so the tail wouldn't burn. The two of them discussed the issue, but doesn't that hurt? I'm a healer. If I just keep healing it continuously, what's a little burn like this? Returning to the present moment, right before launching the attack, he used additional healing magic to trigger the fire sac in the tail, making it look as though a fireball had just been generated right on the spot. Finished with that thought, Will gently launched the flame toward the target. The red target circle was completely consumed by fire. While the professor stood there with his jaw dropped in astonishment, Will just calmly smiled and asked, how's that, Professor? Recalling the scene from moments before, the man silently confirmed, that's fire, no doubt about it. It's definitely basic attack magic. This brat actually managed to use attack magic? Crossing his arms, the professor pretended to be calm and said, you passed. Step back. Will obediently nodded in response, thank you very much, Professor. In the crowd, the participant in the plan was just as surprised as everyone else, and there was someone grinding his teeth in frustration because Will had successfully summoned a flame. Ulpus roared angrily at the person in front of him. What the hell is going on here? The professor rested his hand on his chin, asking in bewilderment, I'd like to know that myself. Why can that guy suddenly use attack magic? The guy's attitude was no longer as casual as usual. I don't care about that.
Just remembering the obnoxious smile on that hateful face made Ulpus lose his mind with rage again. The guy dares to defy me, and on top of that, he's a healer. Sharing a class with him is completely unbearable. If I tell my father, he might even disband this entire class. Hearing that, the man snapped back to his senses and muttered, "Wait." The guy turned on his heel, leaving everything to the other person. "Then just use whatever method you want. Just make him disappear from my sight." And just like that, the unpleasant conversation came to an end, leaving the professor in a tangled mess of indecision, not knowing what to do. Doing something outside of class hours and getting caught carries a huge risk. This isn't like those cases of bullying noble students. Do you have any idea what I had to go through just to become a teacher at this academy? But I have to accept the risk to protect my position. A mere healer daring to put on airs like that, who knows what the other teachers are whispering about? I won't let some 15-year-old healer ruin my life. This time, he had no choice but to meticulously plot a detailed plan. There's no other way, I'll have to take matters into my own hands. At the training grounds after class, we'll ask the person in front of him in confusion, "What's wrong? Why did you call me out here, Professor?" Without answering, the professor turned around and uttered a sarcastic remark, "Seems like you've been getting a bit too confident lately, haven't you?" He rubbed the back of his head with a chuckle and replied, "It's all thanks to you, sir." Promptly receiving the man's utter contempt, "Idiot, I'm not complimenting you." He brought up past infractions, "You're starting to get full of yourself." "But what about this? Ever since enrollment, you've skipped quite a few of my classes. How do you plan to make up for that?" A drop of sweat fell down Will's helpless face. I was actually going to ask whose fault that was, but he still obediently offered a fairly mild response. "I borrowed a classmate's notes and studied everything on my own. I'm sure there won't be any problems, sir." He was met with another obnoxious excuse from the professor, "That's not for you to decide. If you're absent, makeup lessons are mandatory." His glasses were instinctively pushed up the bridge of his nose once more. "The supervising teacher gets to decide the content, and the content of this makeup lesson is that you'll spar with me." Hearing that, Will couldn't help being struck with surprise. A match between teacher and student? The winning condition sounded surprisingly easy. "Yes, of course I'll handicap you. Given the disparity in our actual strength, you just need to land a single hit on me, and I'll pass you." With a condition this sweet, "You're not planning to run away, are you?" True to form, he didn't give an immediate answer. Seeing the opponent deep in thought, the man arrogantly thought to himself, "Your attacks won't come anywhere near touching me. Once I beat you to a pulp so you understand the difference in our power, you'll know how to obey." After a moment of consideration, Will decided to give his answer, "I understand. Fine by me." Hearing that, a malicious glint flashed across the professor's face. No sooner had he finished speaking than he immediately cast a magic circle. "Then let's start right now." The massive boulder was still fresh in his memory. "I've seen his magic once before, it's earth manipulation magic." The ground ahead shook violently. Will quickly leaped backward to dodge. So fast. Suddenly, he spotted something within the rock, and instantly another boulder thrust upward, making evasion extremely difficult. Raising his head once more, Will stared in stunned amazement. A massive stone pillar crashed down right where he had been standing just before. The professor attacked without an ounce of hesitation, huffing with a sneer, "What's wrong? Can you only run away?" Taking a brief moment to catch his breath, Will made his assessment. Unlike conjuration magic, he's utilizing the existing terrain, so his attack speed is insanely fast. On top of that, his attack trajectory is extremely flexible. He's definitely in a completely different league compared to Ulpus. His feet sprang upward to leap once more, but he was quite confident in his own speed, as proven by the fact that it still wasn't too fast for him to dodge. In the blink of an eye, the distance between the two of them closed. The magic circle underneath lit up yet again. In a flash, two huge boulders materialized right beside Will, and then slammed fiercely into each other with zero gap in between. The man who performed such a cruel act wore a smile on his face, but things didn't go the way the professor wanted. He pulled a knife from midair, his hand swinging the blade swiftly behind him. To everyone's surprise, the man's entire body was protected by a layer of stone. The dagger couldn't budge an inch further. "It's so tough. This trick isn't making a dent." Will clicked his tongue and backed away. Encased within the stone, the professor smiled contemptuously, "Pathetic. With that level of skill, don't even dream of breaking my iron wall armor crystallized from Earth." Faced with this situation, he couldn't help venting, "That's a pretty Chinibu name." This time, the man unleashed some harsh words, never heard of anyone using healing magic to attack.
What a half-baked copycat. It's laughable for someone with such weak magic to claim they want to be an attack mage. Will didn't get angry at all, just sighed and said, "Professor, thanks to healing magic, I've studied the human body very thoroughly. I realized that humans normally always have to hold back their own strength because the body cannot withstand the full force of its own power. If you try to force an explosion past your limits, your body will tear itself apart." The professor laughed dismissively in confusion. "What's this? Trying to lecture me? Since your attack magic is useless, are you trying to talk your way out of this?" He raised his hand with a smile and said, "Hang on." He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a bit of muscle. "So even if I break past my limits to unleash extra power, this body wouldn't remain intact either." A surge of magical power radiated from Will's palm. "But I'm a healer, so if my arm breaks, it's no big deal." The man seemed to realize something.
As he spoke, he stepped closer. "Naturally, I don't like pain at all, but it'll heal right up." Even though he was growing quite panicked, the professor still thought it was foolish. How could that trick possibly break through my iron wall earth armor? Well, simply stated calmly, let's find out. A crazed smile appeared on the teenager's calm face. The man could only gape in shock, too slow to dodge. A powerful punch swung down hard against the professor's rugged face. By this point, the rock armor had been shattered, revealing his bloodied face. He smiled calmly and offered a reminder. Arbitrarily deciding a student's limits is a bad habit, you know. Will had learned a new lesson. Ever since Professor Veronica suggested how he could use healing magic to attack, he suddenly realized there was nothing more foolish than assuming something was impossible. He was definitely going to get a lot stronger than this. Suddenly, he sensed something approaching. The moment he sidestepped, a jutting stone pillar shot straight forward. It looked like that punch hadn't knocked the man out. The professor was utterly furious now. Watching him trembling as he tried to force himself back up, Will amusedly repeated, "Didn't you say just one hit means I pass, sir?" But the professor refused to accept it, retorting bitterly, "Shut your trap. Nobody here is talking about eggs." Magic circles manifested across the ground once more. "Having to admit I got hit by a mere healer." Sharp rocks jutted up from the ground. "I will never accept this." Facing this situation, he let out a weary sigh. "Releasing your limits isn't just for throwing punches, you know." Magical power surged from the soles of his feet, and instantly, Will closed the distance right in front of his opponent. The man stared in wide-eyed shock. Too fast. He could only watch as the opponent raised a fist once more. The iron wall armor couldn't form in time. Unable to dodge, the professor could only clamp his eyes shut, bracing himself to take the blow. But he waited and waited without feeling anything at all. He hesitated as he opened his eyes to see a fist stopping right in front of his face. What? Did he stop? Realizing the weird situation shortly after, he found that he couldn't move either. Right after having that thought, the punch connected with his face, making the professor finally realize. No, is time slowing down? He couldn't get a single word out, left only to plead in his heart, "Just stop." The professor's face twisted completely out of shape. This pain was just way too persistent. How many times more painful was this than taking a regular punch? It wasn't even finished punching yet. He couldn't take it anymore, but he couldn't run away or scream his lungs out either. In this very moment, his pleas seemed to echo all around. "Please, just make this end." As if hearing the professor's inner cry, time instantly returned to normal. His whole body collapsed heavily onto the ground. Meanwhile, the one who caused it all wore a gentle smile. "Welcome back, Professor. It only felt like a split second to me." Hearing that, the professor sat right up and screamed at the top of his lungs. What the hell? What did you do?" Will waved his hands dismissively to clear up the confusion. "Unlike you, Professor, I'll explain it to you in full detail. Here is how it happened. The exact moment my fist made contact, I cast a sensory enhancement magic spell on you. Normally, this is a healing spell used for people with impaired hearing or vision. Lately, I've been using it to boost my own reaction time. But I cast it on you at a level way beyond the limit. As a result, your senses became abnormally sensitive, making a single second feel like a whole 1,000 seconds. 1 second equals 1,000 seconds. Just how agonizing was it to get punched in that state? You're probably the one who understands that best, right?" Even though he was smiling, an intensely terrifying aura radiated from his entire body. "Besides, I have a question too. Did I pass the test or not?" Gritting his teeth in annoyance, the guy replied, "Fine.
But Will wasn't finished yet. There's one more thing. The hand resting on the other man's shoulder tightened its grip. It's probably hard to erase the deeply ingrained discrimination in your blood. But if you ever dare to get in my way again, a heavy, suffocating killing intent poured out from his entire body, then I'll make you taste a kind of agony that your body will never forget. It left even the professor trembling with fear. I just want to study in peace. And of course, I don't want to be bothered by other students either. Finally, pretending like nothing happened, Will spoke with utmost politeness. You'll grant my request, won't you, Professor? Just like that, time ticked away as the golden light of sunset washed over the academy. Walking down the hallway, the guy couldn't help but think about that name. What on earth is up with him? I always thought all healers lacked combat capability and were just a bunch of weaklings without an ounce of fighting spirit. Everyone kept saying those people just had to obey attack mages, but he was completely different. Not only did he possess formidable real combat skills, but his willpower was so fierce it practically radiated killing intent. Talk about bad luck running into him. Ulpus appeared at just about the right time. He looked thoroughly amused as he asked this, Professor, he's done with his test, right? Then he chuckled, figuring that the guy was now even closer to getting himself expelled. But suddenly, the professor barked out an order, shut your mouth. He stepped right up into the other guy's face and issued a warning, don't mess with him ever again. I'm only telling you this for your own good. If you think of him as a normal healer, you couldn't possibly be more wrong. Naturally refusing to believe it, Ulpus furrowed his brow and talked back, that's not what I came here to hear. Did you forget? If I tell my father about this familiar threat didn't scare the professor anymore. Then go right ahead and do it. Amidst the others' bewilderment, the professor continued as if just remembering something, if you're really going to do that, instead of targeting me, why don't you just get him expelled yourself? Before walking away, he left behind a cryptic remark, if your family takes action based on your words, it seems pretty likely that he'll eventually turn around and bite us back. The empty hallway was now left with only Ulpus. A fist slammed violently against the neighboring wall. Curses spilled out from the corners of his mouth, damn it. The next day, after classes ended, the book snapped shut. Will stretched his arms out for comfort, it's so peaceful. Why did the situation turn out like this? He could guess why. It looked like the professor had properly warned Ulpus. Occasionally the guy would still glare at him with lingering bitterness, but he didn't dare pull anything anymore. Erica walked closer to ask about the homework while Will was lost in thought. Thanks to that, he could focus on studying. But this still wasn't enough. That bloody scene flashed before his eyes once more. To change the doomed future for humanity, he needed to get even stronger. Yet on the outside, he calmly tutored her, the idea of using healing magic for reinforcement is fine, but what I'm really doing right now is just throwing punches with all my might. Once the tutoring session wrapped up, Erica contentedly left, leaving Will alone in the quiet space. Sensory enhancement is only good for scaring people. Compared to the sheer variety of attack magic, I'm still way behind. I need to come up with new ways to fight. He carefully asked the person sitting before him, that's what I've been thinking. What do you think, Professor? Once again, Veronica showed up to meet with Will. Closing her eyes tightly, Veronica spoke in a cold tone, there's one thing I want to say first. Looking utterly dejected, Will reluctantly gave his reply, yes. Crossing her arms, she broke into a praising smile, good job. Will thought he was about to get chewed out, but was shocked to hear her say that, you're the talk of the faculty lounge right now. For a healer to actually keep up with Schwarz's classes is quite a remarkable achievement. Veronica shifted her gaze toward the teacher's direction. Most of the instructors seemed pretty unhappy about it. Will let out a helpless smile. Well, yeah. With a heavy sense of doubt, he asked, are you keeping it a secret that you gave me advice? Professor Veronica answered without missing a beat, it's not really a secret, I just don't talk to the other teachers very often. There simply hasn't been a chance to bring it up. Will silently recalled the image of her sitting all by herself in a corner without saying a word. Is Professor Veronica isolated even among the faculty? He awkwardly scratched the back of his head to smooth things over. Well, I'm glad things turned out this way, because it's all thanks to your advice, Professor. I'd feel terrible if your standing was affected because of this. Veronica suddenly spun around, looking ready to leave. I don't care, so don't worry about it. Besides, I should be the one thanking you. Will asked back doubtfully, you're thanking me? She turned her head back to answer his question. Like I said, with a healer's mindset, they would never even think about putting that kind of theory into actual practice. Veronica drew the sword she had strapped behind her back. Veronica swung her blade up with a stern expression.
I've been curious for a while now to see what a real-life combat healer looks like.
Will started to panic slightly, asking with a flustered tone, "Professor, what are you planning to do?"
She raised her sword into an attacking stance. I want to test what your current level is.
Didn't you want to know how to get stronger? Hearing that, he hurriedly waved his hands to refuse. Wait, going up against Professor Veronica. Veronica cut his words short. On the battlefield, there's no room for timeouts.
Putting her strength into it, she leaped forward. Will's face mirrored both panic and dread, looking completely lost on what to do.
He raised his short blade to fend off Veronica's attack. Gritting his teeth, Will used his small sword to desperately block the blow.
Veronica poured her strength into a powerful downward slash, but he quickly ducked and slipped away from the edge of the blade. Gritting his teeth while blocking, Will thought to himself, even though I used magic to speed up my reaction time, I still barely made it. He watched as she continuously slashed her sword toward him. At this pace, Professor Veronica wasn't just fast anymore, every single movement of hers was streamlined to the absolute maximum to unleash consecutive strikes. Will stepped back, catching his breath with heavy, exhausted gasps.
Relying solely on physical enhancement to keep up was going to hit a wall sooner or later.
Summoning his energy, he charged back at Veronica, staking everything on a single chance using a burst of speed he had never revealed before. Will's back foot stomped down hard against the ground, unleashing a massive wave of force that cracked the earth beneath him. I have to catch her off guard. Harnessing his explosive speed, Will lunged forward just as she left an opening. In a flash, the sharp tip of his blade thrust straight toward Veronica's face. She tightened her grip on her sword as a surge of energy radiated from the weapon. Leaning to the side, Veronica delivered a tremendously powerful slash that left Will stunned.
His eyes narrowed in a mix of fear, awe, and disbelief.
The tip of his short sword was cleanly sliced off, fluttering down to the ground. Will stood frozen in place, managing only a few awkward laughs. Veronica swiftly sheathed her sword back into the scabbard at her hip. Resting her chin on her hand, she remarked with genuine admiration, "I didn't expect you to actually make me draw my magic sword." Will looked at her face, feeling helpless as to how she could keep such a nonchalant expression. Putting her hands on her hips, Veronica spoke with deep emotion. "I honestly thought your level stopped at being a healer who could fight somewhat like an attack mage. But in reality, your capabilities rank right up there among the top offensive magic users of your age group." Will stammered in response, "Thank you so much, Professor, but this still isn't enough." Crossing her arms, Veronica looked at him with expectant eyes. "I like people with ambition like yours.
Just strengthening your physical body isn't enough to satisfy you, is it?"
Will lifted his broken sword, looked down at it, and spoke up, "Yes. No matter how much I break the limits of my physical body, what I can do is still limited." Crossing her arms, Veronica pushed back against his point. "A sword isn't just for slashing, you can also thrust it or throw it.
There definitely has to be other ways to utilize healing magic beyond just enhancing physical stats."
He scratched his head awkwardly and replied, "I've thought of all sorts of ways, but none of them really feel right yet." She raised a finger and pointed at her own temple. "You're probably lacking real combat experience. Every idea needs real-world testing to truly take shape.
Knowledge is important, but ideas born from actual combat are what you're really looking for. Didn't you realize anything from our fight just now?"
Her words made Will reflect on the encounter. "That's true."
He humbly bowed his head to ask for guidance. "Then should I continue sparring with you, Professor Veronica?" Veronica replied right away, "That wouldn't be bad. But there's going to be a field training exercise for monster extermination coming up soon." Hearing that, Will looked completely startled as he repeated, "Field training?" He thought to himself, "This happened in my past life too." It's a joint monster extermination training exercise involving 3 academies: Schwarz Academia, an academy for offensive magic; Heilich Academia, an academy for healing magic;
and Silbern Academy, an academy for swordsmanship.
Students from each school form squads and carry out actual monster subjugation requests.
Back when he was at Heilich, he didn't take part, but Will remembered the terrifying image of those monsters. This time around, he would wipe out the monsters and change the doomed future.
He clenched his fists tight with unshakable determination. "I will definitely."
Veronica stared at his expression for a moment without saying a word. Her gaze grew heavy as she spoke. "If you want to participate, you have to prove your abilities through the Academy's selection exam. I heard there's someone among this year's freshmen who's been dubbed a genius. Your goal is to snatch the top spot among your peers."
Will asked with a curious look, "How does the selection exam for field training work anyway?" Veronica answered without hesitation, candidates will fight directly against each other.
She began explaining so he could understand. About 100 people apply every year, and only a select few who truly show their mettle get chosen. Hearing that, Will evaluated the situation in his mind. This school really only cares about combat. Will brought a hand up to his chin and fell into deep thought. I remember at Heilich, so few people sign up that pretty much anyone who wanted to join could just do it. This kind of competitive drive must be the Schwarz style. He recalled memories from his past life. Ah, how nostalgic. I wonder what my master is up to right now. Veronica chimed in to remind him. By the way, rumor has it that Genius has already surpassed the instructors themselves.
Taking first place is not going to be a walk in the park.
Will felt a surge of excitement inside. That sounds way better than my old homeroom teacher.
Will curiously asked, has the professor not met that student yet?
Veronica let out a sigh of disappointment. I heard another instructor is already in charge of that student, so they never come to me for advice. Will let out a helpless, awkward laugh internally. I don't think that's the only reason. The other students are too scared to approach you either. With a firm expression, she placed a hand over her chest. For sure.
Don't worry, I'll help you train too.
Hearing that, Will was overjoyed. Thank you so much, Professor.
Time quickly brought them to the day of the selection exam.
He walked along the corridor of the arena, thinking to himself, in the blink of an eye, the day of the exam has arrived.
His face clearly showed resolve and determination. I've prepared with everything I've got. Now it's time to fight. Suddenly, a voice called out from behind, making Will freeze in his tracks. Hey, Will? He turned around in confusion. It was none other than the headmaster, the president of the Magic Academy Alliance and principal of Schwarz Academy, Alnaram Goldgran. Alnaram flashed a bright smile and stepped forward to greet him. Long time no see. My granddaughter has been doing great ever since.
He smiled back. I'm very glad to hear that, sir. Staring right at Will, he spoke. Even though you're the one who saved my granddaughter, I apologize for only paying attention to you until today. I know you've mentally prepared yourself, but things must be pretty tough at Schwarz, right? Will placed a hand over his chest and answered with absolute confidence. It was a bit rough at first, but everything's smooth sailing now. He said with growing excitement, I'm even aiming for first place in this selection exam.
Alnaram stroked his beard and let out a hearty laugh. That's the spirit. Suddenly, a booming voice echoed as someone stepped up from the opposite side. What a joke, it's making my ears ring.
He slowly approached the two of them. A guy like this actually talking about claiming first place.
As the training supervisor, I've got to teach you brats a lesson.
This man was none other than the field training supervisor. Will turned back to stare at him, quickly making his assessment. He had met this guy in his past life. Recalling memories from his past life, Bode the Purple Lightning was an offensive mage who had achieved many illustrious feats during the Great War. While he was lost in thought, Bode strode over and grabbed Will by the collar. Personally, I don't have many fond memories of this guy. A blazing, overpowering pressure radiated from him. Combat is a world of pure talent.
Practice and effort are just cheap add-ons stitched onto it.
Furious, Bode pushed his face right up against Will's. Being a mere healer, you don't stand a ghost of a chance. Faced with the tense situation, Alnaram stepped in to mediate. The test is about to begin, so let the results speak for themselves.
Arguing won't solve anything. Hearing that, Bode let go of him. Arguing? This is just my way of teaching. He turned around with an arrogant look on his face. Besides, the opponent you have to face is my Sirius. A young man's silhouette stepped forward from the distance. That young man was none other than Sirius Bluenote. Will's gaze locked onto him. He stared at that familiar figure walking right toward him. It was the genius Sirius Bluenote, the rival he needed to defeat to claim the top spot. Two resolute gazes locked onto each other with unwavering determination. Alnaram stroked his beard and remarked with emotion, such fiery spirit. Excellent. But it's almost time.
Come on, don't just stand there staring, let's go.
The candidates quickly lined up and walked into the arena.
The entire grandstands buzzed with explosive excitement. The contestants stood neatly in rows, awaiting the command.
Will turned to the side and asked, is Erica participating too? Erica whimpered helplessly, if I don't join, my allowance gets cut off.
The guy standing behind him shot him look sharp enough to kill. Will let out a helpless, awkward smile. I really don't want to be here right now. Alnaram stood at the center of the student crowd to deliver a speech. I am immensely proud to see such a massive turnout of applicants this year.
Let your passion and fighting spirit burn to the absolute fullest.
He raised a finger to begin explaining. The preliminary round is about to start. After a set period of time, those who manage to stay standing will advance to the main round.
Will felt deeply tense, thinking to himself, a survival match with hundreds of people right here, isn't this way too cramped?
As if reading his thoughts, Alnaram slammed his staff hard against the ground. You must be worried that this place is a bit tight, but don't worry. A wave of magic swept outward, opening up an empty void beneath everyone's feet.
Everyone looked down beneath their feet in utter shock. What is this? Is that a whole starry sky right below the ground? He raised his staff high into the air, where it caught the bright radiance of the sun. A massive magic array instantly appeared across the sky. Let's begin. Will was teleported straight into a dense forest. He started scanning his surroundings. Is this the forest behind the academy? Suddenly, Alnaram's voice echoed out. Did everyone hear that clearly? I've just randomly teleported all of you.
You can choose to avoid strong opponents or team up with familiar faces.
Erica shrieked in panic. Where is this?
Sirius listened closely with a surprised look on his face. However, your starting positions all depend purely on luck.
Will looked up at the sky and exclaimed, teleporting that many people in the blink of an eye? Unbelievable. Following his declaration, flocks of birds took flight into the sky.
Now, I officially declare the start of the field training selection exam. He quickly leaped off his feet, charging forward. First, he jumped up onto a high tree branch to survey the area. Will began casting a skill on himself, masking his presence, shrinking all life activity, and completely erasing his existence. Suddenly, a noise rustled from behind him, drawing his attention. There was a group of 2 people fighting against a girl. On this side, the young man extended his hand and commanded, "Go get them, my golem." Seeing it rush forward, Erica swung the hammer in her hand. "I'll smash you to pieces with this magic hammer." The girl on the other side blew out a freezing gust of air.
A snowstorm. Will stood hidden in the background, watching with a smile. This is a great chance to observe all sorts of offensive magic. If I just aimed to scrape by the exam, it'd be such a waste.
He curved his lips into a knowing smirk. Sweet.
I want to try that trick out too.
The young man along with his summoned beast had successfully knocked down the 2 girls. Both of them threw their hands up in the air in triumph, cheering, "All right, I took down both of them."
Did you see how strong my golem is?
Suddenly, Will glided out from behind him and replied, "I saw it loud and clear."
He reached out and grabbed the young man firmly by the head, then cast a spell utilizing the consciousness severing technique.
The young man's eyes rolled back completely white, losing all life. Momentum carrying him forward with his limbs still frozen in place, he crashed backward onto the ground. Will placed his hand on the guy's head, beginning to sense and manipulate the flow of life force to knock his opponent unconscious. I have to get a firm grip on the opponent's head, so it's tough to use unless there's a huge gap in skill, but it can subdue an enemy without causing heavy injuries. Will wiped away a drop of sweat with an awkward smile. This is a technique I came up with during my special training with Professor Veronica.
Glad to see it actually works. Abruptly, he turned around with high alertness, scanning his back.
3 throwing knives flew straight toward Will, but he quickly dodged out of the way. He glared warily at the blade stuck into the ground.
This magic is.
After confirming it, Will let out a massive sigh of relief.
He looked toward Ulpus and 2 others approaching him. Ulpus, you really never learn, do you? The other guy gestured mockingly. Learn what? I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
I'm just trying my absolute best to pass this exam. All 3 of them simultaneously unleashed their magic with all the power they had.
Will thought to himself, so it's 3 against 1, huh?
He unleashed blades glowing with a bright orange light, blade creation magic. The bowl-cut-haired guy next to him stepped forward, poison enhancement magic. All 3 unleashed their abilities, hurling torrents of swords toward Will, shadow clone magic. Ulpus burst out laughing with supreme smugness and triumph. These toxic blades will sink straight through your skin with just a single graze. And with this many coming at you, no matter how fast you are, don't even dream of blocking them all. The flurry of swords whistled through the air, hurtling straight at Will. He looked up at the venomous blade tips, thinking, using recovery magic to clear out the poison is fine, but dealing with this many projectiles using only physical enhancement to get through without a single scratch is going to be pretty tough. His hand began channeling his personal magical power.
If it's this.
Suddenly, a hazy phantom rolled forward right to his feet. The swords crashed straight into the illusionary figure and bounced right off. Covered in cold sweat and utter disbelief, Ulpus screamed out loud, What the hell is that?"
At that moment, the golem used its own body to shield Will from the front.
He raised his hand and began channeling magical energy into it. Basically, recovery magic only works on living things, but this golem operates on a mechanism that uses the summoner's blood as a medium.
In other words, it's a magical creature. He lifted his hand to take control of the attack. Even though it can't perform complex actions like a living being, as long as I infuse it with life force, I can control it. Complying with the command, the golem rapidly rushed toward the other three. It slammed its fist directly into the bowl-cut guy's chest, making him cough up a mouthful of blood. He turned around again and sat heavily on someone else. No, Ulpus watched from the side with extreme impatience. You guys, don't let yourselves get taken down so easily. Suddenly, a residual image flashed right in front of him, startling him. Will's hand grabbed his face. He wore a gentle smile and said, "All right, good night." The scene shifted to the golem fighting the other two people. Will stood on a tree observing, thinking to himself, physical enhancement only allows for close combat, but golems can make up for that weakness. Furthermore, doing this lets me leisurely observe everyone's attack magic. Suddenly, his eyes widened in extreme astonishment. From afar, a powerful whirlwind was wrapping around Will's body. Will was both panicked and confused. What just happened? Suddenly, a wave of magic surged forward. Will used all his might to leap away from the tree. That was the power that had completely destroyed nearly half of the green forest. Even his two classmates from earlier and the golem had collapsed onto the ground. Will looked in utter bewilderment at the devastated scenery around him. From a distance, a familiar figure was slowly walking closer. It was Sirius Blue Note, casting magic as he steadily approached. Will thought to himself, genius Sirius Blue Note lives up to expectations. Truly impressive ability. Defeating him won't be easy. He quickly put his hands into his pants pockets to defend. Should I try it? His gaze narrowed when he heard Almaram's announcement. That's enough. Everyone stopped upon hearing the announcement. Good job, everyone. The preliminary round ends here. The four people still standing here have passed the preliminaries. A teleportation formation appeared beneath everyone's feet. The finals will take place tomorrow at the arena. So rest until then. I will activate the teleportation magic. Everyone stay put. While being teleported, Will turned his head to look towards Sirius, who was staring back at Will with murderous intent. Seeing this, Will broke out in a cold sweat and thought, looks like he's really looking forward to tomorrow too. Tomorrow is the finals. Things quickly returned to peace as they left. Scene shifts to Will's room. He was sitting at his desk. He was writing something down. What should I do to pass the time today? Outside the door, noises echoed. That's enough already, Ulpus. Two people following Ulpus were desperately holding him back. That guy is genuinely strong. Besides, it seems like he even healed us when we were unconscious. Ulpus turned back with an angry glare. Shut up. What the hell do ordinary noble trash like you guys know? According to the Omen family code, being looked down upon by a healer is completely unacceptable. He turned his face away, starting to plot. If this gets out, I don't know what my father will say. The other two looked at each other, breaking into a cold sweat without saying a word. Both of them sighed helplessly, turning their backs to leave. Then go do it yourself. Ulpus, we're quitting. Nobody wants to get beaten up anymore. He anxiously shouted, wait. Both of them collectively ignored him right where he stood and left. With an ugly, furious expression, Ulpus said, whatever, I have to get rid of him. At this moment, Will was calmly eating pastry and reading a book, paying no attention at all. Suddenly, a knock on the door rang out, interrupting Will. He closed the book and stood up. At this hour? Will stepped outside, slowly opening the door while thinking something bad was about to happen. Ulpus greeted him with a beaming smile and an outstretched hand. Hello, Will? Good evening. Don't you think tonight is gorgeous? He asked with extreme vigilance. What scheme are you plotting? He smiled back in a friendly manner. A scheme? I just wanted to have a peaceful chat with you. Ulpus extended his hand to start the conversation. Let's be frank. I hate you. I absolutely hate healers. I've set up all sorts of tricks to kick you out of this academy. Will recalled the previous scenes and thought to himself, I've ruined a few of those tricks already. Well, good night. He wore a mysterious smile, but I should have just said it directly instead of beating around the bush like this. With a hardened, furious expression, Ulpus gave an order, leave this academy. Will shook his head in refusal. At this point, I actually respect you. Why do you have to be so fiercely hostile toward me? He arrogantly replied, why? I despise healers. Do I need any damn reason? Ulpus pointed at himself with immense pride. Even within the Omen family, anyone born a healer is cast away to distant, remote branch families. My older brother was the same, a weak, useless guy. He began to think of his older brother. Even when mocked, he would just force a smile to let it go. A proud attacking mage and a pathetic healer are two completely different tiers. Will lowered his face and replied, "Is that the kind of education deeply ingrained in nobles?" Ulpus spread his arms wide and spoke in a commanding tone, "If you understand, then get lost from Schwarz. This is no place for healers." Will's expression hardened. "You think I'm going to say I give up?" He replied with absolute certainty, "I'll make you say those words yourself." Ulpus's eyes revealed a greedy look. "You have family members you care about too, right?" Will's face instantly furrowed as he stared at him. "What?" With a smug expression, Ulpus began to recount. "I had my servants outside investigate you. Will grew up with his older sister in a remote village. You two must be very close, right?" Will's face noticeably sank. "If I give the order to my subordinates, what will happen to your sister? I'll leave you to imagine that." He stepped right up to Will's face and asked, "Well, have you made up your mind?" He calmly replied, "Yes, I've decided." He was about to put on airs when suddenly his neck was grabbed. "If you understand, get lost right now. Pack your things." Will forcefully threw him backward with his hand. He bent and locked the guy's arm. Trembling, Ulpus whimpered in plea, "Stop." With a completely casual expression, Will applied more force. "Didn't I tell you? I've already decided." Ulpus cried out in desperate screams. After a piercing shriek, Ulpus lay on the ground, groaning in pain. He continued to mutter, "You think you'll get away with this? As long as I show them this broken arm, the Academy won't let it slide. My dad either." Will grabbed his arm and cast healing magic. "It's fine, I've healed it." Seeing this, Ulpus panicked immensely. "What are you planning to do?" His eyes rolled back as he screamed in agony. Ulpus's arm was broken once again, and then immediately healed by Will's magic. "I'll heal it again." He picked up the guy's arm casually and broke it once more. He pleaded in pain, "Please don't." He gave a reluctant smile in reply, "Come on, my determination isn't that superficial. Targeting me is one thing, but the moment you dare touch my sister, I can't just sit still." Piercing screams echoed continuously. "You've got to make him understand properly. From the bottom of my heart, I have to break your will." Ulpus lay on the ground, having fallen into the abyss of despair. What the hell is this guy anyway? He looked at Will's face, which was smiling at him. "This is bad, he's a demon in a healer's skin. I must never mess with him again. My life will become a living hell." After a fierce and intense moment, Will spoke up, "Well, good night, Ulpus." He waved goodbye to Ulpus like a soulless corpse. "Don't forget your promise never to touch me again." Will stretched his body refreshingly, confessing that it actually felt pretty good. Alright, time to sleep to prepare for tomorrow. Scene shifts to the next day. Will was standing in the arena, thinking, the main tournament is about to start. Alnaram was up above, resting his hands and observing downward. Bode, sitting next to Sirius, was also watching. Will thought to himself, the top 4 from the preliminaries will battle in a one-on-one knockout format. But he put his hands on his hips and said, "I didn't expect you to make it through too." Erica stood timidly in front of him. Erica could only helplessly recall, "Well, I just created a firewall and used a defensive strategy, plus it was partly luck since I didn't actually take anyone down." Hearing that, Will felt helpless. An attack class mage who defends from start to finish is truly a rare find. He stared intently at Erica, feeling internal worry. "But can you survive if you keep playing like that?" She timidly spoke up, "We're friends after all. How about you go easy on me a bit?" Will decisively replied, "No way, I knew it." She reached out her hand to take an offensive stance. "Anyway, I've already passed the threshold score. Now I'll just do my best." Seeing that, the referee raised his hand to signal, then let the match begin. Erica sweated profusely as she cast magic. "Here goes." She fired a fireball toward Will. He quickly formed a shield with his hand to block it. His facial expression did not change at all as he thought, "Orthodox fire arts, firepower at this level can still be easily handled by my recovery spell." Will looked toward the opposite side and murmured, "Sorry, Erica, but I can handle this batch easily." Suddenly, Will's expression turned utterly astonished. "Something's wrong, this is?" Erica continued to launch another fireball. "This isn't over yet." Will quickly dodged to the side to keep the fire away. He watched in shock as the flames surrounded his body. The flames that had just hit kept burning endlessly without going out. This was Erica's special magic, fire magic with abnormally high tenacity. Even though the destructive power is only average, if you carelessly get hit repeatedly just thinking your healing will keep up, you're in deep trouble. Memories of that previous plan flashed through his mind. Last time we borrowed her fire, it burned for a very long time too. Turns out it wasn't just due to the salamander tail's traits, but also influenced by her own ability. Using this to create a firewall makes it genuinely hard to pierce through, but ultimately Will felt a bit helpless, concluding that it truly reflected Erica's tenacious personality. The students in the stands all cheered for Erica. That girl is pretty good. Take down that healer. Gradually, she grew even more confident. Oh my, could I actually beat Will? That's right, I passed the preliminaries too. Just like that, Erica bravely shouted, if you want to surrender, now's your chance. But her opponent calmly replied, it's fine, I'm about to counterattack. She instinctively blurted out, of course. Then she realized something was off. A fireball much stronger than the previous one was launched. This time it will definitely work. The corner of Will's mouth curled into a smirk. If this flame refuses to go out, he held out his palm and touched that flame. To execute a planned strategy, I'll use it to attack instead. Witnessing that sight, Erica thought in shock, using my own flame? A fire punch? Just by letting her guard down for a split second, Will had already appeared right in front of her. Her complexion turned completely pale. Erica cringed all over and stammered, I surrender, causing him to come to a sudden halt. Out of sheer terror, she collapsed onto the ground. The MC's announcement broadcasted from the loudspeaker. The winner is Will. Low whispers arose from the stands. Even so, Will didn't feel angry at all. Even if you win, a healer is still not respected. But they turned around to curse at Erica. Don't just surrender out of nowhere like that. And you call yourself an attack mage? Causing her to clutch her head, trembling with fear. Just a moment ago they were cheering for me. I'm sorry. He grabbed the person's hand to comfort her. Don't worry about that. I think Erica fought very well. At the same time, while healing Erica, you'll definitely have a chance to pass. Looking at their intertwined hands, she dazed and called out, Will. The romantic scene was shattered by the appearance of someone. No way, that cannot happen. Erica fearfully grabbed Will's shirt. Professor Bode sneered while raising a finger and saying, just think about it, and spewed out harsh words, healers are just useless trash. Surrendering to that kind of trash makes you even worse than trash. Just like that, Bode exuded a terrifying aura and made his judgment, clearly you failed. Get the hell out of here and save us the trouble. She trembled, struggling just to reply, I'll leave right now. While Erica had already left, he turned around to scold the person. Don't you think talking to a student like that is too much? He made up an excuse to do those things. I am the field training supervisor. If the participants' skills are too low, I have to spell it out for them. That's called tough love. Saying that, Bode turned and walked away. But his words seemed to imply something. Looks like only one person will pass this year. Suddenly, a tiny voice echoed behind Will's back. You're in the way. Turning his head, he saw a familiar face. Sirius, since when did you? Besides, speak louder. As he brushed past him, Will cautiously asked, do you think the same way as Professor Bode? And the answer from Sirius was, ultimately, strength is everything. Professor Bode is right, because he is strong. Everyone has their own opinions, and Will couldn't refute that either. I see, his tiny voice rang out, but I don't think you're weak either. So, Sirius Bluenote turned his head back, placing his trust in him. I expect you to go all out. He frowned, seriously looking at the person in front of him. That familiar name really brings back quite a few memories. Sirius Bluenote, now that he remembered, in his past life he had heard about a terrifyingly strong attack mage of his generation on the northern front. The winds he created swept away everything around him, while simultaneously defeating many opponents. This power truly swept across everything. Finally, the finals had arrived. Before entering the match, Will initiated the conversation. Judging by Professor Bode's attitude, it seems I'll never be recognized unless I win. A confident and familiar smile appeared on his face, so I am definitely going to win. Facing him, Sirius calmly replied, is that so? After the two contestants finished exchanging words, the referee shouted loudly, the final match of the selection exam, begin. A gust of wind emerged from beneath their feet. A giant windstorm was unleashed by a hand much smaller than it. Will gently dodged to the side. Both of his feet stomped down hard, and sparks of electricity shot outward accordingly. Will used the rebound force to propel himself toward his opponent. Sirius's face became clearer and clearer. Suddenly, a strong gale surged around, forcing him to back away. The force was so intense that Will had to cover his face with his hand. After a brief clash, he didn't rush in to attack like usual. I see, I really can't get close. Who knows who will win this match? Will or Sirius? the result will be decided soon enough. Dust filled the arena, and Sirius tiredly spoke up. Too fast, what a pain. Magic gathered in the palm of his hand. Then how about this?
A powerful gale appeared, but in a different form from the column of wind earlier.
Will also noticed the difference. Unlike a tornado, this was a wind current that blew away a massive area.
He was also casting magic on himself. At this rate, I'll be blown right out of the ring.
Then he squatted down and pressed his palm against the ground. I have no choice but to use this. A bizarre phenomenon occurred. A tiny tree gradually sprouted up, and finally blossomed into a giant tree. Sitting in the stands, Erica thought in shock, is that healing magic too? Admiration for Will welled up. Will has gotten even stronger.
Toward this technique, he was extremely confident.
Professor Veronica, what do you think? A leaf fell from the tree above, revealing Veronica's bewildered expression below.
This is. Will step forward to explain why the tree grew from the ground. I infused life energy into plants to make them grow rapidly.
I read about plant controlling attack magic in the library and thought I could do it too.
With this move, my tactics will diversify according to the types of plants. Suddenly, his vision blurred. Before he could guard himself, Will's swaying body was caught by her.
Veronica calmly lifted him up and asked, "Are you all right?" He scratched his head and asked carefully, "I'm fine, but does this mean I'm running out of magic power?" She scratched her cheek nonchalantly and said, "The books didn't mention this move consumes so much energy."
The person suddenly lowered his voice and said, "So that's how it is."
He confusedly asked right away, "What do you mean?"
She had to explain the situation just now. Destroying is always easier than saving.
Recovery magic consumes infinitely more magical power than attack magic.
When using recovery magic to attack, the efficiency of magical power usage is bound to be extremely low.
Another new piece of knowledge to absorb.
I see, I need to carefully consider the timing of when to use it. Finally returning to the present, Will was very confident, thinking to himself, and this is that moment. From the very beginning, I never had a talent for attack magic, but I will overcome all these disadvantages. But facing the massive tree ahead, Sirius calmly raised his hand. The tree was instantly split in half by a sharp blade of wind.
I didn't expect this move. Wind blades will appear, he has that trick too?
Will's brain listed out the types of moves he used.
A whirlwind that brutally swallows enemies.
A gale force wind that blows away a massive area. Wind blades that slice through hardwood. Anyone who approaches is blown away by the vortex swirling around him. After listing them, he reached a conclusion: the magic is too powerful, without a single flaw. Truly the caliber of a top contender.
However, Will wouldn't give up easily. But I am determined to become strong using this very magic.
Thinking that, he immediately dashed forward. Once again protecting himself within the gale, Sirius calmly stated, "No matter how many times you try, you'll never be able to touch me."
His whole body was subsequently knocked far away,
but the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Noticing that, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. Suddenly, a sharp tree sprouted and pierced through Sirius's shoulder. Having done that, it immediately burrowed back into the ground, leaving him in astonishment.
"What is this?" Will very kindly stepped forward to clear up the confusion. "Your whirlwind couldn't protect you underground, right? This type of plant drives its roots deep into the earth and can sprout anywhere. Actually, they're called rhizomes rather than roots." Glancing at the familiar figure behind the stands, Sirius irritably clicked his tongue. Pondering for a moment, he felt curious and asked, "Do you care about Professor Bode that much? You two don't seem to get along at all."
Bode was frowning deeply as he watched the match below. The answer was quite simple: he is strong and he teaches me.
But Will didn't believe it for a second. Just because of that? You don't need to learn from him. You come from a prestigious family anyway, right?
The other guy suddenly fell silent before beginning to share. "In my clan, magical power is everything.
Age and gender don't matter, the strongest becomes the head. Because of that, everyone is an enemy fighting for the inheritance, and even my father refused to teach me magic."
Hearing that, he felt quite uncomfortable and muttered, "What kind of family is that?" Sirius thus drew the conclusion: so following the professor is the best way for me to get stronger.
With the chat finished, the battle resumed. "Done yet?"
"The shoulder you hit still hurts like hell." Everyone watched in fear at the immense power ahead. Will smiled awkwardly at the scene before him. A dragon made of wind had appeared.
"Let's put an end to this."
The dragon rushed swiftly toward his opponent. Sirius was truly serious now. "Lately, deep in my heart, I used to think attacking mages were just playing around, that I was the one working harder,
fighting without any innate talent. But that's just how it is. Having talent doesn't mean you are transcendently superior to anyone else. Family background, talent, or past, everything is completely fair. Because of that, he suddenly smiled and blurted out, "Sirius, I really want to defeat you right now." Just talking to himself. The two faced each other like sworn enemies. "What are you declaring?" A magic circle appeared in the middle of the ground. "Come forth, my best seed." Massive tree branches grew out instantly, and lush leaves blossomed outward. In the middle of the huge tree trunk, a tree magic circle named Gel appeared. It was a plant that normally required a lot of time to grow huge, but forcing it to grow this fast would consume way more magical power than other plants. The dragon and the tree collided fiercely, but the more magical power I poured into it, the higher it grew. The wind force was so strong that it forced Will to step back. The dragon finally shattered the tree, causing Sirius to heave a sigh of relief from afar. The tree branch was blown into the sky by the wind, but it wasn't just a branch, it was that giant tree trunk. He hadn't expected his vision to be tricked, so Sirius was so shocked that he blurted out, "What?" Once again he had to explain clearly, "This plant has extremely intense vitality. Even just a twig can become huge." Since Sirius is creating a wind dragon, he won't have time to defend. Finally, the tree trunk crashed heavily down onto the ground. Sirius was struggling to crawl out from under the massive tree crushing him. In front of him stood Will. He stood firmly, pointing his sword at Sirius. Even though he couldn't stand this humiliation, he had to admit, "I lost." Drowning out Will's heavy breathing was the commentator's announcement, "The winner is Will." The incident left everyone in the stands astonished, and they immediately buzzed with discussion. "Hey, that healer actually won. Taking down Sirius in a one-on-one match, maybe he really is strong." Ever since the match was decided, Sirius had been silently bowing his head. Will held out his hand with good intentions to help him up. He exclaimed, "That was close." As expected of a genius. But contrary to that warmth was Sirius's disappointment, still not good enough. Will was surprised to hear this. He commented on the match, "What do you mean it's not good enough? That was an amazing match." At that moment, a voice echoed in deep disappointment, accompanied by a tremendously powerful bolt of lightning crashing straight down onto the arena. Smoke rose from the aftermath of the thunderstrike. Sirius took the hit dead on. He simply passed out right there. Bode walked over and easily used his foot to break the tree trunk, crushing Sirius. He skillfully lifted him up with one hand. Bode carried Sirius away just like that. He was angry and disappointed with him. "You failed. Sirius, I'm going to retrain you." His words caused the people in the stands to gasp, "That's way too harsh." Bode imposed his own mindset on everyone and grew increasingly angry. "Everyone down in the stands thinks the same way I do. There's no way I will ever accept a healer taking first place." Seeing his aggressive attitude, no one in the stands dared to resist, or even dare to twitch. Only Will dared to speak up, and he had the most right to do so at this moment. He was outraged by his words. "This is going too far. I am the winner. But that doesn't mean Sirius is weak. It was an evenly matched fight, and if we fought again." Bode's gaze toward him was fiercely harsh. He refused to hear any objections. "Don't talk back to me. A good match? Promising for the future? You fools, on the battlefield, practical strength is everything. Losing means being treated like trash and losing your life." That's it. Will sensed the rotten nature of this guy's character. He felt a sense of injustice for Sirius, even though it was his own student. Will pointed at himself with confidence, "Then I beat Sirius, didn't I? I've proven my strength." The anger in Bode's heart was growing stronger. His voice sank to a terrifying level, that level of strength. Bode slowly walked closer to tower over Will, applying pressure on him. But Will remained calm. He started reasoning with him, "It's true we can't fight, but we support everyone with healing magic. That's a division of roles. If we don't know how to unite and cooperate, humanity will perish." Hearing this, Bode fell silent for a moment. His facial muscles still hadn't relaxed at all. Bode made a gesture as if brushing dust off his coat, speaking in a flat tone, "My students stayed at the front lines to cover you healers so you could run away. Yet those healers were wiped out miserably by monsters while fleeing. My crippled students with nowhere left to go are all dead. You couldn't even stand firm on the battlefield, nor could you save my students. Just because of trash like that, why did Sirius have to sacrifice himself?" When the final sentence ended, he had already prepared a clenched fist aimed at Will. He stood motionlessly upon hearing about the man's buried grief. Will also admitted that Professor Bode made some sense.
Thinking of this, countless scenes from the battlefield flooded back into his mind.
I'm counting on you. From now on, you are the greatest healer in the world.
I should have fought with my own hands. If you're weak, you ultimately won't accomplish anything. With your strength, I have to fight myself and remind myself. But an era where monsters become more ferocious is about to arrive. When that happens, those who hold power are no longer allowed to be selfish. He clenched his hands into fists and slowly spoke up. Then someone with nothing in their hands like me needs to become even stronger.
If I defeat you, will you acknowledge me?
Bode lowered his hand. He smirked, treating what Will just said like a joke. Bode turned to instruct the referee of the previous match. Hey you, as soon as the match is declared to start, take that kid and get out of here. The man was shocked and wanted to ask again for confirmation. Professor Bode, don't tell me you're actually going to fight.
Bode replied with absolute certainty, once it's a selection, the rules are decided by me.
The referee, while carrying Sirius away, cast one last glance back at Will, filled with worry. But in his eyes right now was total determination, without a single trace of fear. Looking at the scene before him, the referee could only shake his head and let out a sigh. As he escorted Sirius away from the arena, a much tougher battle officially began. The special match Bode vs. Will begins.
Bode rubbed his hands to warm up as a powerful surge of energy was generated.
He was filled with confidence and contempt for his opponent. I'll show you just how low your level really is.
Bode's oppressive aura and strength made Will slightly cautious. My magic power is running out, and this opponent is the strongest one yet. Fighting normally won't win. I have to use this first. Watching the way he executed his technique, Bode attacked as well.
He judged, too slow. Will raised his face. The light from Bode's magic shone upon him. His attack was immensely powerful, as if trying to tear space apart. After that attack, its aftermath left swirling clouds of dust and smoke. Bode held up 3 fingers proudly. Let me teach you 3 reasons why my victory is absolute.
First, overwhelming distance to control the enemy. Second, speed that leaves the opponent defenseless. And finally, a finishing blow in a single strike. The opponent can't do anything anymore. It's over, or can you not hear anything anymore? When he thought the enemy had fallen, Will's voice rang out. Where is that finishing blow in a single strike? Contrary to what he desired, Will was still kneeling firmly on the ground. His body had a few minor scratches, but nothing significant. He had successfully calculated everything correctly. I knew Bode possessed special thunder arts. To minimize damage from electricity, I had to avoid taking a direct hit to the body. No matter how good I am, if the brain or heart takes a hit, recovery magic won't save me in time. So I created an extremely conductive neural pathway, conducting electricity from my arms down to my legs and straight into the ground, dispersing the current to minimize damage. Doing this much was just barely enough to hold out. Will started channeling his power once again. He felt more confident as it was now his turn to counterattack. Bode scratched his head, still carrying contempt for him. Looks like you had to fight for your dear life just to endure that blow. But Will paid no attention to his words. He continued to circulate his internal energy, enhancing his physical body. The worst happened. He couldn't execute the technique. His body felt completely devoid of strength as he tumbled forward. He looked at his hands, his body was shaking violently right then. What? I can't put any strength into my body. Bode had already guessed it. He explained the mechanism of the technique. The absolute rule is that anyone hit by my death lightning will be paralyzed and unable to move. Will still refused to give up. He raised the hand pierced by the blade to attack, accompanied by an exclamation, bad. Bode's smug smile appeared once more. He maintained his condescending attitude. Come to think of it, you were fine earlier. Bode attacked him directly once again. This time it seemed even more powerful than before. In the stands, Erica was worried to the point of tears. Will was still struggling against the relentless waves of magic. He mentally cursed, damn it, he's truly strong. His unique magic genuinely has no flaws. Now I understand why he's so arrogant. Even so, I've decided I will win. The moment that thought was finalized, Will placed his hand on the ground. This is my final seed and my final magic. This is my final seed and my final magic. Plant manipulation. Grow up. Water guardian tree. As soon as he finished speaking, a massive tree sprouted right before his eyes. Will calculated very carefully for this move. This plant absorbs and stores a massive amount of water from the earth. If used as a shield, the lightning bolts will be dispersed. Bode was still supremely confident. He believed that trick of his wouldn't do a thing to him, so what? Accompanied by that question was shock in the depths of Will's eyes. Everyone in the stands was also dropping their jaws in disbelief. The guardian tree just created by Will's magic was split in half by Bode without being able to put up any resistance. Looking at the destroyed tree in front of him, Will shouted in disbelief, "No way!" Bode walked over to him with utter confidence. He continued to show contempt. "Is that your final move? What a pathetic defensive trick to end with." But as he got closer to the tree, Bode noticed a mushroom growing out of the trunk. Then, as if catalyzed, a forest of mushrooms began to grow endlessly. Naturally, this shocked Bode. He shouted in confusion, "What the hell is this?" Will pulled the blade out of his palm and gave a faint smile. "I didn't expect it to be this effective." Certain plants and mushrooms have spores that grow at lightning speed after being struck by lightning. A forest burned to ashes by lightning is the absolute best environment for growth because there are no competitors, right? This farm blower mushroom is one of them, but that's not even its only unique trait. Bode instinctively looked at the thousands of growing mushrooms. He still couldn't believe it. What? Not long ago? A strange sensation spread throughout his body, startling him. Bode looked at his arm. At that moment, electric currents seemed to run through his whole body. He felt completely numb. Will seized the golden opportunity. This was the moment. He lunged forward with a punch carrying his full strength. Faced with that situation, Bode wasn't worried at all. He was still smiling. Bode quickly counterattacked. He punched Will squarely, sending him flying backward. Will couldn't react in time to the counterattack. He directly vomited blood. Looking at Will's kneeling posture made him feel even more contemptuous. "Foolish, my practical strength is clearly far superior. My special magic is electricity control. If I use electricity to enhance my body and move at high speeds, a little trick like this is nothing at all." Will's entire body trembled. He clenched his fists to support his body. He still couldn't believe it. "No way, even after going this far, I still can't win?" Bode's gaze turned sharp. He lowered his voice, pronouncing every word clearly like a judgment. "Then you've lost." As soon as those words finished, Bode prepared to unleash the final blow to finish him off. But at that exact moment, Veronica appeared. She pointed her sword at Bode, demanding that he stop. "That's enough. Isn't this going a bit too far, Professor Bode?" Bode paused slightly, laughing mockingly. He turned around and pushed her sword aside. "Veronica, don't stick your nose into this when you're just a rookie." The trembling Will over there also realized he had a savior in Professor Veronica. Veronica wanted everything to end here. She reasoned, "The match is decided. Pushing it further will only injure him for nothing." Hearing that, Bode objected. "This kid can heal his own wounds. He can still fight." Veronica pushed harder to protect Will, "Only while he has magical power. He doesn't have enough magical power left." The more he listened, the angrier Bode got. He wanted to attack Veronica as well, he just lacks the will to fight. She wouldn't back down either. Veronica began gathering her aura, ready for battle. There's nothing left to discuss. The two of them lunged at each other, signaling a massive battle about to break out. But fortunately, right at that moment, a voice rang out, stopping their fierce fighting spirit. "Enough, both of you." That person was Alnaram, who had just appeared. He looked down at the two of them from above. Alnaram spoke up to warn them, "Letting you two bicker here is the most useless thing of all." He descended slowly, as light as a silk thread. Alnaram looked toward Bode and spoke calmly. "Bode, stop." He closed his eyes as if carrying a warning within it. Bode also sensed that his expression wasn't very pleasant, but this order couldn't be disobeyed. Bode scratched his head and agreed, "Fine." Alnaram then turned toward Veronica. His expression changed completely compared to when he looked at Bode. "Veronica, I apologize for not explaining clearly." He raised his hand to cover his mouth and coughed a few times to get everyone's attention. Alnaram officially announced, "The main content of the field training selection exam ends here." Everyone dispersed quickly. The people didn't linger and slowly moved out of the stadium. Will was still struggling to heal himself. He winced in pain. "Damn it, I'm completely out of magic. Healing isn't making any progress. I don't want to lose. Is the gap still this big?" Without a word, Veronica simply picked him up in her arms. Will was extremely awkward, struggling even to say her name. "Professor Veronica." She calmly comforted and encouraged him. "I think you did very well. Don't push yourself anymore. Get some rest." Will lowered his head shyly. He spoke in a small voice, "I understand." But deep in his heart, he still wasn't convinced. "Did very well?" That's still not enough, and the night gradually passed. As he walked along the road, Will kept muttering his internal assessment. That is the capability of a top-tier attacking mage. It's not just pure strength, the level of tactical sophistication is on a completely different tier. But even with them, humanity will still perish. I need to become stronger. He walked up to a room. Will opened the door, looked inside, and spoke politely, "Excuse me." Alnaram was inside. He welcomed him warmly. "Will, I'm glad you're here." He stroked his beard and asked about his condition with concern. "Your wounds seem fine." "Just as I predicted." Or rather, without waiting for him to ask further, Will explained directly, "Once my magic power recovers, these minor injuries will heal immediately." Alnaram burst out laughing. He affirmed, "Then participating in the field training won't be a problem at all." Hearing this surprised Will. He asked again to make sure, "I get to participate?" Alnaram treated it as a given. "You're the winner of the main event." "Of course. Besides you, Sirius and Erica passed as well." Will still seemed unable to believe this, "But sir, Professor Bode said everyone failed. And I didn't even win." Understanding the situation, Alnaram explained, "It's like that every year." This surprised Will once more. "Every year, sir?" Alnaram revealed Bode's purpose. "He says everyone failed this year just to apply pressure and awaken the students' true potential. But in the end, he always lets a few pass. Field training is full of dangers anyway. That's just how he shows he's a true teacher." Hearing that, Will evaluated, he really is such a clumsy type of person. "But I suppose it makes sense. In my past life, Bode always fought at the front lines for humanity. Without a doubt, he is one of the heroes who worked hard to save the world. Even though I can't stand his words or actions, he has his own pride." Without making Will wait long, Alnaram quickly assigned him his task. "Now Will, you will team up with students from other academies in the role of an attacking mage, and you will carry out monster subjugation requests." In truth, Will was still bewildered. He silently repeated those 4 words, "monster subjugation." "This is the first time I've faced monsters since my reincarnation. 5 years later in my past life, the direct cause of humanity's extinction was these very monsters." First, we must talk about their origin. Monsters originally referred to any creature possessing magical power. Not all monsters were hostile toward humanity. They occasionally attacked humans, but that was part of their survival behavior, falling within the scope of natural competition. If we understand their ecology well, they could be neighbors we can utilize. However, about 2 years from now, the world will change. The blood moon. Monsters illuminated by this red moonlight become extremely brutal, and ever since then, the tragedy began. Monsters gathered together and began slaughtering humans purely out of a desire for carnage. 2 years after that, the Demon King descended, and humanity quickly fell into a disadvantageous position. Many people died and nations collapsed. Attacking mages were highly valued on the battlefield, but for that very reason, they perished one after another. The same thing happened to elite knights. Healers didn't go to the front lines. Once the battle lines collapsed, the only outcome was being destroyed by monsters. Until the day I died, almost no one was left to fight. In just a few months, humanity would be completely extinct. Will clenched his fists tightly. He made a silent promise to himself, "I cannot let that tragedy happen again. I need to become stronger than anyone was in my past life and seize the power to fight back against the massive monster invasion. And if possible, figure out the cause, the origin of the crimson moon that drove the monsters so savage and brutal." Alnaram noticed him deep in thought. Stroking his beard, he remarked, "Quite a determination you've got there. That look in your eyes reminds me of the first time we met." He offered a gentle word of encouragement, "Keep this up and you'll do just fine." Will felt a bit nervous. Just fine? How do the teachers actually view this field training exercise? Alnaram walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder, looking quite amused. "Partly that, but I especially wanted to talk to you." Will stared at him in utter confusion, wearing the wide-eyed look of a lost fawn. After talking with Alnaram, Will finally headed to the gathering spot for those chosen to go on the field training exercise. By now, he and Erica had already arrived, leaving only one person missing, Sirius. After waiting a little while, there was finally some movement. Sirius arrived, preceded by the burly and broad-shouldered Bode. Will stepped right up in front of him and spoke first. "I heard that you're so strict with us because you actually care about your students." Bode leaned his face in close to Will's and let out a fierce, terrifying roar. Standing straight with his hands on his hips, his voice filled with aggression, he snapped, "I don't know what you're rambling about, but you're just weak trash. Don't go acting all high and mighty until you can actually land a hit on us. Will felt embarrassed by his attitude and muttered quietly, "Yes, sir." Inwardly, he let out a bitter complaint. His attitude hasn't changed one bit. Bode brushed past him, letting out a heavy huff. "If you get it, then focus on your field training, you idiot. Though, I suppose I should thank you for looking out for Sirius." Right at that moment, Sirius spoke up softly from behind him, "Me too." Will was startled by his sudden appearance. Privately, Will evaluated him. He's still as calm and collected as ever. Sirius clenched his hand into a fist and punched the air to show his resolve. "Thanks a lot. Because of that, I can push myself to the limit in training and grow even stronger." That's Professor Bode's lesson. As long as you survive and manage to get your revenge, you haven't lost anything. Will matched his energy and raised his hand for a fist bump. "That's the spirit, we've got to keep getting stronger." Sirius Bluenote's lips curved into a cheerful smile. He reached out and bumped fists with Will as if sealing a promise. After that, he quickly made his way over to Bode. Will watched him go, feeling a quiet sense of luck. Having more outstanding offensive mages around is a great thing. That way, the war against the monsters is bound to go a lot smoother. Veronica called out from a distance to remind him, "Will, we should get going too." Will cheerfully replied, "I've been looking forward to this trip myself." By this point, on the way to the field training location, Veronica made an announcement from inside the carriage, "We're almost at the Daco Forest. Let me confirm the details of the exercise. This time, your mission is to hunt down golems in the Daco Forest. 3 trainees from Schwarz, Heilich, and Silbern will form a 4-person team alongside an instructor from one of the supporting schools." Erica had a question. "Have the team members already been decided?" Veronica confirmed it for her. "That's right. Erica is on my team as well." Erica thought to herself, "That's definitely better than being with total strangers. But Professor Veronica is a little intimidating." Veronica briefly mentioned Will's teammates. Will's team isn't ordinary in the slightest. "We've arrived." Taking the lead, Veronica stepped down first and announced, "Let's go." It looks like the participants from Silbern are already here. Will climbed down from the carriage as well. Remembering his past life, he thought to himself, "Silbern? I knew of them back in my previous life, but we aren't really acquainted right now." Suddenly, a sweet girl's voice rang out, "Lord Will?" Marie rushed over and wrapped her arms tightly around Will in a hug. "I've been waiting for the day I'd get to meet you again." Her sudden action left everyone standing there completely stunned. Squeezed breathless, Will politely held his hands up in the air and spoke up, "Wait a second. I'm sorry, but I have no idea who you are." It was only then that Marie realized she might have gone a bit overboard. She released her grip on him. "Oh? Is that so? Anyway, we didn't really get a chance to talk properly back then." She finally introduced herself properly. "I am Marie Goldgran, the granddaughter of Schwarz Academy's headmaster, Alnaram Goldgran." Hearing her introduction, Will finally realized she was that same girl from before. His memories of Marie flashed back clearly into his mind. Will was a bit surprised, and he couldn't help but marvel inwardly. "To think I'd be reunited right here with the little girl I treated back at the headmaster's estate." Will spoke up to check on her health. "How have you been feeling since then?" Marie flexed both of her arms to show off, eager to prove herself. "I'm completely fine. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to properly thank you back then." Will hurriedly waved his hands. "It's fine, really. Your grandfather already recommended me to Schwarz Academy anyway." Marie looked right at him, pointing to herself with conviction. "But I wanted to find a way to repay that favor myself. Since I didn't have any talent for magic, I entered Silbern Academy and poured all my effort into mastering swordsmanship. Thanks to that, I ended up at the top of the Academy's entrance exams." Will was taken aback by her hidden talent and couldn't help shouting out, "Valedictorian?" Marie shyly covered the corner of her smiling mouth. "Turns out I actually had a knack for the blade." Will could only let out an astonished gasp. He looked at the petite girl in front of him and privately evaluated her. Going from being completely bedridden to taking the top spot in such a short amount of time, is she some kind of monster? She walked right up to him and grabbed his hand, lifting it up. "I'll definitely be able to help you out, Lord Will. That's the whole reason we were put on the same team." Understanding her a bit better now, Will smiled and agreed wholeheartedly. "In that case, let's do our best together." Right then, Will realized something. So this is what the headmaster meant when he said, "I'm counting on you." Marie noticed a carriage approaching them and quickly grabbed Will's hand, pulling him along. "The people from Heilich Academy are here. Let's go say hello." Erica was taken aback by how quickly they hit it off. "They sure look like they're having fun." Veronica chimed in, we should probably liven up our own team's atmosphere a bit too.
Marie dragged him right up to the carriage and started looking around busily. Where are our other team members?
Are Lord Ren and Lord Turf here yet? Hearing those names, Will had a slight reaction. He called Ren.
The person inside the carriage calmly replied, don't rush me, I'm coming right out. The man finally stepped down from the carriage. He introduced himself and immediately threw out a question, I'm Ren.
Are you kids the ones joining my team?
This man was none other than the Hylich Academy instructor, Ren Kaitos.
Upon finally laying eyes on him in person, Will grew incredibly excited.
Master, he's the master who taught me healing magic in my past life, the greatest healer I've ever known. He was so happy his body practically trembled, to actually end up on the same team like this. Behind Ren stood another person, who called out to remind him, teacher, step aside for a second.
I can't get down.
As he stepped down, Marie quickly greeted him first, you must be Lord Turf.
I'm Marie Goldgrand from Silburn.
Turf pushed up his glasses and politely responded, pleased to meet you all. After adjusting his spectacles, Turf clearly saw Will and Marie's hands gripped tightly together, feeling as though he'd been struck by lightning. All of his excitement and cheer vanished instantly, replaced entirely by cold indifference. Unaware of this, Will cheerfully introduced himself, I'm Will from Schwarz.
Turf turned his face away, his voice laced with disappointment and a hint of contempt. An offensive mage, huh?
Once everyone had finished introducing themselves, Ren turned around and walked off with a long yawn. Alright, this is Ren's group.
Do whatever you want, I'll just be here watching. Seeing his sloppy attitude, Marie looked a bit surprised. Is that really how he operates?
Will, who was already used to it, replied, my master is always like that.
He quietly followed along behind his back. Will put forward a request, can I call you master? Ren looked somewhat surprised by the offer. Why call me that?
Will quickly explained his reasoning, I can use healing magic too, but right now I don't have an instructor guiding me, so I figured I could learn from you.
Ren was amazed to learn about his abilities. An offensive mage who knows healing magic too? I think I heard something vague about that earlier. What an intentionally clever team arrangement. Will asked him again to confirm, is that alright with you, master?
Ren didn't care much about titles anyway and accepted it. Sure, call me whatever you want. Hearing their conversation, Marie chimed in playfully, if Lord Will is calling him that, then I'll call him master too.
Turf hurried up from behind like a little puppy, trying to pull her back. Wait a second, Marie. Erica was once again amazed by Will and his teammates' adaptability. They got close really fast.
Veronica refused to lose, we can't afford to fall behind either. During this pacification campaign, each team is assigned a specific sector.
We'll use this tent as our base camp.
The goblins' territory is a bit deeper in, so Will and the teacher should head out right away. Just like in actual combat, the healer stays behind at the base rather than going to the front lines. That's why I never participated in my past life.
Along the way, Marie voiced a question, even though you're a healer, master, you still go to the front lines?
Ren explained casually, basically, I'm just here to supervise.
I'll be fine. Just do whatever you want. I'm not a fan of being tied down anyway. Marie matched his laid-back rhythm, then I won't hold back at all.
Will hesitated for a moment, pointing behind her, speaking of not holding back, does that mean? Marie caught on to what he meant instantly, of course. She quickly prepared to draw her weapon. Gripping the massive heavy blade with both hands, Marie said with absolute confidence, with all my might, I'm going to swing this sword to the fullest. After wiping out the group of monsters, Marie bounced around happily on the ground. She leaped straight up onto the peak of a tower made from the piles of monsters she had just slain to celebrate her victory.
The massive contrast prompted Will to ask, is that really the same girl? The girl turned to him with a gentle expression and called out, Lord Will.
Marie threw her weight into swinging her giant greatsword with a fierce, determined gaze. Looking up, Will couldn't help but stare in sheer awe. This is Marie's swordsmanship, every single /pack's terrifying power.
Could she honestly clear this place out all by herself?
Just as she snapped back to her senses, Marie suddenly froze, her eyes widening in shock. Seeing wave after wave of monsters creeping closer, she couldn't help shouting out, there are way too many of them. Watching Marie's performance, Ren critiqued, she certainly makes an impression, but she leaves way too many openings. That young lady is great at offensive sweeping, but she looks weak when she gets surrounded.
Cover for her. Hearing this, Will promptly answered, understood.
He stood silently for a long moment, a wave of joy washing over him.
Finally, I get to fight some monsters.
A monster lunged forward, baring its sharp teeth as a roar echoed all around, nearly shattering the quiet atmosphere of the place. Will saw its expression drop and muttered to himself, those terrifying monsters.
A hand from behind suddenly tapped lightly on Will's shoulder, giving him a chill down his spine. A calm, steady voice rang out. "Why are your shoulders so tense? You need to relax." Will looked up, deep in thought and mildly surprised, remaining silent. After a long moment, he offered a light, friendly smile in response. "Yes." Will thought to himself, just like back then. This person directly touched two fingertips together, generating a blinding surge of power. Will raised his hand to cast a spell called Physical Reinforcement. The tips of his boots shifted slightly as he settled into a starting posture, ready to burst into speed. Will dashed forward, and with just a few effortless sword slashes, he practically wiped out half of the monsters. Their backs instantly pressed against each other. "I'm counting on you for the other side." "Got it." Will quickly seized the upper hand. Wielding his sword with authority as foul-smelling blood splattered everywhere, he let out a relaxed, comforting sigh. "So this is what it feels like to fight using healing magic?" In the blink of an eye, the monsters were completely wiped out, lying sprawled across the ground. He muttered to himself, "Not bad at all. Perfect, it works on monsters too." He picked up his knife and pondered over it for a long while. The blade Professor Veronica gave him was remarkably sharp, completely different from the standard knife from Ulpus. Standing nearby, Ulpus shouted angrily, "What are you mumbling about after stealing something like that?" Marie jumped up in pure joy, her heart blooming. With spring-like explosive power and superb swordsmanship, she cheered, "Lord Will is amazing." Standing in the middle, Ren suddenly spoke up, "All right, that's enough for the first day. Let's head back." The smile faded from her lips. Marie looked down with a sense of relief. "Suddenly my body feels so much lighter." Will continued, "That's thanks to the teacher." He pondered to himself, if you evaluate healing magic based on stats like the severity of wounds or the types of illnesses it can cure, the teacher's true strength lies in his sheer recovery speed. You heal so naturally that people don't even realize magic is being used. Because of that, people who aren't healers could never understand how incredible it really is. I actually asked the teacher about that before. Suddenly waving his hand with a faint smile, he had said, "I can't go around doing flashy things like that. As long as they're healed, that's all that matters." Walking away as leaves silently fluttered down in the lonely forest, the world remained completely oblivious. Yet the greatest healer in the world was none other than Ren. Even so, this turned out to be a pretty good group. The four of them gathered around the dining table. Ren broke the quiet atmosphere directly. "You guys racked up some good points today." Turf chimed in as well. "Everyone came back without a single injury, so I didn't even have to do anything." Raising his bowl high, Ren praised him. "Not at all. Providing recovery through meals back at the base is part of a healer's duty too, right? That bowl right there is Turf's special recovery soup." Seeing Ren's good mood, Turf looked up and said softly, "You did a great job too." Ren snorted and put on a proud tone, "That flavor is partly thanks to my special seasoning, you know." Sitting across from them, Marie chuckled gleefully and piled on the flattery, "Master is truly amazing. Not only are you a healer, but you seem so knowledgeable about the front lines too. I wonder why." Hearing that, Ren just nodded contentedly and explained, "The front lines are where the most people get injured. If you treat them right there, basic knowledge just piles up naturally." Turf continued, "Teacher travels to all sorts of different places constantly. That's why he rarely teaches regular classes." Will took a small sip of the soup to savor it. "Aren't those places super dangerous?" "I have complete confidence in my ability to run away," Ren stated clearly with a hand gesture. "You say that, but unless someone needs saving, you never actually run away. Losing the master would be a heavy blow to all of humanity. Not just because he's an exceptional healer, but because he's one of the few people who actually knows what to do in real combat." Will thought to himself, "Fate might have changed for me and the others, but there's still time before that incident happens." His gaze narrowed, turning more intense than ever. Overcome by some unknown emotion, he picked up his bowl and slurped the soup down frantically, swearing to himself that in this lifetime he would absolutely not let his master die. Will lifted his large bowl to gulp it down even faster. Seeing this, Ren could only offer an awkward remark, "You've got quite an appetite, huh? Want another bowl? Master is the best." The atmosphere inside the small tent was livelier than ever. Meanwhile, someone was quietly adjusting their army in the dead of night. An outstretched hand revealed the distinct shape of an eye radiating a massive surge of power. The power of the crimson moon. Right there, the monsters bared their teeth in savage grins, their eyes glowing a bloodshot red. At the same time, a pair of heavy, massive feet stepped out from within. He was one of the higher-tier monsters. The next day, we set out to hunt down goblins once again.
We shared our experiences from yesterday's battle, and our teamwork had noticeably improved. We even joked that at this rate, the mission might be finished by tomorrow. Yet all three of them stood straight with less than cheerful expressions. Their footsteps still pressed against the soft, lush green grass. Ren called out, causing Will and Marie to turn around in unison. Let's turn back. Marie instinctively pushed back, her tone questioning, why? We haven't even taken down a single one today. Will wondered, is something up ahead? Without answering, Ren calmly explained, on the contrary, there isn't a single trace of anything. Goblins are extremely territorial. If intruders enter, they swarm out to attack like they did yesterday. But we've come this far and haven't seen a single one. A voice echoed, you only just noticed? What's going on? Letting out a sigh, he lowered his tone to reply, I don't know, but on a battlefield, you should trust your instincts. Ren turned around, waving his hand to give an order, that's it for today. Let's head back, and on the way, call in another nearby group to regroup. Looking up, Marie immediately spoke up, I believe Professor Veronica's team has a base nearby. Hearing that, Ren turned back with a faint, crinkling smile at the corners of his eyes, you're really well informed. Let's go. Will stepped forward, carefully scouting the surroundings little by little. The three of them walked through a desolate mountain forest devoid of any living creatures, behavior completely out of line with their usual habits. Something felt terribly wrong. Marie took the lead, pushing branches aside to guide the way. This will lead us right out to the path near the nearby base. Sunlight gradually pierced brilliantly through the gaps in the leaves, creating a warm atmosphere. Will couldn't stop thinking about his past life, even though he knew he couldn't change it. But suddenly he froze, his expression turning dark. He spotted a tiny hand tightly bound in thick, heavy rope. A small, sullen face devoid of any smile stared blankly downward. It was Erica. She was tied firmly to a straight wooden pillar. Rushing forward, Marie threw out her hand and shouted enthusiastically, I'll save you right now. She strode quickly ahead, paying no attention to the fact that her small feet were stepping right into danger. Marie instantly tumbled headfirst into a trap, covered in mud. From a distance, Will immediately let out a loud shout. With a resolute expression, she pulled something up from behind her. Marie quickly yanked the object free from the ground. Wielding a javelin to shield herself, she broke into a deep smile and offered words of reassurance. I'm okay. The two of them stood frozen in place, speechless. A trap? And they used Erica as bait. Before Will could even snap back to reality, Ren stepped right in front of him and roared at the top of his lungs, Hey, more of them are closing in. A sharp javelin came flying swiftly toward them. The two instantly moved to defend themselves. Enraged, Marie screamed at the top of her lungs, We're surrounded! The horde of monsters surged forward with ferocious momentum. Right at that moment, Marie finally struggled her way out of the pit trap. Will's gaze turned razor-sharp and terrifying. He lowered his voice and said, We're surrounded. The monsters kept marching closer and closer without a shred of fear. Will frowned and cursed inwardly, how cunning. They're hunting humans. This is identical to the monster movements after a crimson moon. That's not right, the crimson moon shouldn't appear for another 2 years. Could that tragedy have already begun? Tied up, Erica let out a soft, uncomfortable moan. He turned his head to look, feeling a sudden surge of surprise as he thought, she's still alive. There's no time to think about that anymore. I've gained the power to fight precisely for moments like this. Marie held her greatsword, her heart aching as she muttered, with so many of them, it's a huge relief she's still alive. But Will jumped down and shouted loudly, Leave this to me. Combining plant manipulation with everything I've learned. He opened his mouth and shouted out an order, manifest. Hearing this, the monsters didn't back down and fired back with a harsh, crude roar. Will turned around and, seeing her terrified expression, spoke directly, Marie, you don't need to stay on the front lines. It's much easier to exploit openings when you stand behind the melee unit. She quickly replied, understood. More importantly, charge up your energy accurately. Her entire body blazed with a blinding radiance. Her footsteps suddenly paused, as if unable to believe what she was seeing, and she unleashed a wide area attack to break their formation. Not standing idly by, Marie also declared, Watch my full power strike. From behind, a creature suddenly attempted a stealth attack. In an instant, a single sword slashed quickly and neatly took it down. A voice rang out, I'll cover you so not a single one slips through. The creature was left sprawled out on the grass right behind her. From a distance, Ren didn't hold back his praise. Great job, you two. I'll go rescue her. Will quickly ran off, shouting back,
I'll leave it to you, teacher.
Suddenly he turned his head as a chilling sensation surged through him. This terrible feeling, his pupils instantly dilated rapidly.
Part of the Crimson Moon's influence is making them ferocious. Meanwhile, Ren hurried toward Erika.
He walked quickly without noticing the terrain changing right beneath his feet. A tall figure suddenly emerged to block the view, causing the monsters to coordinate their forces.
It was an ogre, and it had been hiding underground. This is bad, the distance is too far, I won't make it in time. It raised its hand, drawing back its fist.
It was just like this in my past life. The master never abandons the injured.
From now on, I will be the greatest healer in the world.
Watching with a grim expression, he clenched his teeth so hard they clicked.
No matter how brilliant a healer is, if you live like that, it'll take me many lifetimes to fix everything.
With the fist looming right before his eyes, a helpless voice cried out, "Master."
Ren also froze for a brief second, saying nothing. That monster reached out forcefully and stepped forward, moving with more imposing majesty than ever before. He smiled faintly, lowering his voice as he wondered, "Wait, what is this? Was that physical reinforcement just now? The master is using recovery magic to attack?"
Watching that monster use its bloodshot, sharp eyes to fiercely try and destroy every target around it, it swung its arms wildly in Ren's direction.
Fortunately, he agilely dodged.
Ren leaped high off the ground, leaving behind specks of dirt on his cloth shoes.
He dashed around behind the monster and used a master-level stealth strike.
Ren gently touched the back of its neck, whispering a farewell, then, "Sleep tight." A beam of blue light shot straight through the back of the monster's neck, terrifying it. Instantly sensing the danger from behind, it frowned and groaned.
With a single quick and clean stealth strike, Ren rapidly brought down the monster, causing it to collapse heavily onto the lush green grass.
Will rushed over to Ren in a hurry, shouting loudly, "Master, you didn't explain the trick thoroughly."
He calmly replied, roughly like that. "A good teacher also learns from his disciples, though I just thought of it myself." A good teacher also learns from his disciples, though I just thought of it myself.
Both Will and Marie beamed with radiant smiles, showering him with praise.
Will said, "As expected." Marie chimed in just as quickly, "So cool." Ren waved his hand to undo the bindings, regaining his composure as he ordered, "Alright, let's retreat while we still can." Will looked over with a gloomy expression.
The monsters were still thrashing about.
He lowered his voice to ask, "With the master's strength, wouldn't you be able to wipe them all out?"
Seeing this, Ren sighed helplessly and explained,
"You fool, I just put the ogre to sleep. I'm a healer, even if it's a monster, I have no intention of harming it. When it wakes up, it'll just feel a lot more refreshed." Will ran up from behind, following his retreating figure.
A slight smile bloomed at the corners of his lips, just like the master.
"We've broken through the goblins' encirclement."
After taking down a few pursuers, it seemed they had given up. The four of them stopped in a clear, open spot, calling out, "We can probably rest here for a bit." Ren reached out, pouring his effort into healing Erika.
He called out in a low voice, "Hey kid, wake up."
She suddenly opened her eyes wide with shock.
Erika sat up.
The very first thing she asked was, Marie immediately reassured her, "You're safe."
Will raised a hand in respectful gesture and politely asked, "Sorry for asking right as you woke up, but what happened? Why were you alone?"
Erika clearly showed panic, clutching her head in fear as she asked herself.
"Yesterday's subjugation went so smoothly. I didn't hold anyone back, but every time I let my guard down, bad things happen. When I woke up this morning, Professor Veronica was gone." Will suddenly repeated Professor Veronica's name.
"She left a note saying to wait for orders, but didn't say when she'd be back, so I got really worried. While discussing it with the other two, somehow it ended up with me going out to look for her."
His face darkened as he stared at her scrutinizingly. "They pressured you and you just couldn't refuse, right?" He thought to himself, typical Erika.
But this can't be taken lightly. A single misstep could cost you your life. None of us were prepared enough to face a situation that deviated so far from class or drills. Erika didn't answer, continuing with a worried tone, "After entering the forest, I smelled a sweet scent, and when I woke up, it was already like this." So the goblins used a sleeping drug, that trap earlier, and now cooperating with an ogre.
What on earth is going on? No, now's not the time to think about that. Anyway, your base is nearby. Let's go rendezvous with the other two. All four lined up and immediately moved out at a fast pace. Erika walked ahead, suddenly freezing and lowering her voice here. "Wait."
She looked up, a flash of panic crossing her face. Looking at the mess before her, she said flatly, "The base has been destroyed." Marie suddenly spoke up, "I researched this beforehand.
Ogres have very high territorial instincts. meaning they normally don't leave their domain. Therefore, a base set up outside their territory should have been safe, and yet it ended up like this. Why?
Will pondered deeply for a long moment. Taking the initiative to attack humans is also a trait of monsters appearing after a crimson moon.
This can't be explained right now.
Ren crouched low to scout the surrounding area and spoke up. There's no sign of a fight either.
Looks like the two of them ran off somewhere. Let's split up. I'll go look for those two. You three team up with Turf and leave the forest.
Don't assume our base is safe. Stay alert at all times.
Responses rang out quickly. Understood. We hurried back to our base. Will pushed the door open and barged in, calling out loudly, Turf, are you okay? Hearing the commotion while cooking, Turf paused briefly before replying, back already? Lunch isn't ready yet.
Marie could finally let out a sigh of relief. Thank goodness you're safe.
Turf, still not understanding what was going on, asked, what's going on?
Will turned and walked off with Erica, calling back over his shoulder, explain later.
We have to leave right now. Right.
He froze for a split second, his eyes widening. Both of them were startled by the sight before them, lowering their voices.
Looks like we're being watched. Erica dropped her jaw in shock and yelled loudly, What? What do we do? What should we do?
In response to her shock, Will simply stated, I was just thinking about how weak I used to be.
Erica paused, as if guessing his meaning, and asked back, You mean?
He turned around, the corners of his mouth twitching up into a smirk as he said softly,
Take it down, the three of us together. I believe we can win.
The monsters stood towering right before their eyes, looking resolute and terrifying.
Will watched the monsters cautiously.
Facing this large horde, the coordination of the three of us is a matter of life and death.
He didn't forget to remind his teammate Marie not to rush in recklessly like before. Just use attacks to support the vanguard. Action spoke louder than words as Will immediately acted. Leave the vanguard position to the wood golem. He continuously offered the best strategy.
Erica used fire to block the goblin's advance, but in contrast, she felt deeply insecure. But someone like me got caught so easily earlier. Despite that, Will still smiled and encouraged her. It's fine, your flames will be very useful.
Acknowledged, Erica couldn't hide her surprise.
She was still anxious and trying to regain her composure.
Not wanting to let Will down, Erica put her all into generating fire magic. In the blink of an eye, the goblins were surrounded by flames. Terrified of being burned alive, one by one they began to back away. Erica beamed and shouted happily, I did it.
But before Will could sigh in relief for long, he immediately realized something was wrong. Great, now we won't get overwhelmed by a massive wave of spirits all at once. Out of the fire, a sturdy, solid trotter slowly stepped forward.
Its well-toned muscles caused even the flames to retreat. It was an ogre. It strode out majestically, deliberately provoking them. Will was slightly surprised. Turns out it's in a completely different league from the goblins.
Having thought that, he ordered the wood golem to charge and tackle the ogre. At the same time, he directed Erica to coordinate smoothly. Erica, fire. She quickly acknowledged the order. The puppet's body was wrapped in fire. It lunged straight at the ogre. The flames spread across his body, causing him to howl in excruciating pain with his mouth wide open.
Seizing the opportunity, Will turned and called out for support, Marie. Marie quickly caught the timing. Got it.
She swung her sword with her back, landing a heavy blow to its face. It was knocked flying, crashing sprawlingly onto the ground. Marie happily high-fived Erica in celebration. Great coordination.
Will still didn't dare let his guard down. The coordination is definitely great, but the reason I'm hesitant is because it continuing to get back up still doesn't seem enough. Will was clear-headed enough to recognize its power, regenerative capability. Marie started to feel worried. Does this mean we just have to keep doing this until it can't regenerate anymore? Will didn't rush, pondering deeply. I wonder if its regenerative power has a limit? There's no guarantee we can take it down if we just keep attacking like this. If we intend to finish it off, we need a surer method. But then Erica shrieked in panic, pulling him back to reality. Something's coming. Will fought off the powerful incoming energy surge all by himself. But when he slowly opened his eyes, a blade was right in front of him. That's right, a goblin is attacking him. Those things? Looking further away, the ogre could be seen holding them in its hands, preparing to hurl them at will. Stop dragging things on and send that annoying goblin sniper packing. Erica keenly noticed another goblin flying down from above. They're appearing again. Marie forcefully rushed up and gave them a flying kick. She seemed to have a plan of her own. I'll send it back. With those words, Marie batted the goblin far away into the distance. This was the moment she proved her reliability. Will looked at her expression, figuring she must have come up with a plan. then leave the rest to me from here on. Hearing that, Will felt at ease and acted, I'm counting on you. He placed all his trust in his teammates, blocking the large number of goblins with Erika and the wood golem's wide area attacks. Marie would deflect the thrown weapons, leaving nothing to worry about. Will charged into close combat with the ogre. Now I just need to deal with this ogre. It quickly noticed his presence, but Will was still a step faster, dodging the attack. Viewed from afar, the battlefield was just a blur of dust and smoke. The ogre kept missing its attacks, and instead received a parting tattoo from Will in its lower region. This only drove it crazier, making it grind its teeth in fury. The ogre roared angrily, the sound echoing through the forest. The wound on its chest inflicted by Will healed the very next second, and the cut on its wrist also recovered rapidly. Only, before anyone knew it, Will was already standing behind it. You've got an opening. He deployed magic right behind it. This is the finishing blow. Without hesitation, Will used a vitality-boosting spell to defeat it in a single move. The ogre's heart began to ache intensely. Its entire body trembled as it whimpered weakly. Its eyes rolled back, and tears began to well up. The scene before them suddenly turned grotesque, blood splattering everywhere. Just looking at it spelled out the outcome. Will wore a triumphant smile on his face. The battle ended. The ogre collapsed onto the grass. He could finally breathe a sigh of relief by forcing the ogre's regeneration to overwork itself. The explosive backlash would cause its body to rupture. It couldn't regenerate from this blow. Afterwards, he turned around and arrogantly declared, right now, the only thing left to do is wipe out the remaining goblins. Following the declaration, every single monster was sent off to the Eternal Realm. Bodies here, heads there, scattered across the ground. The battle finally came to an end. Before them lay a battlefield piled high with monster corpses. Will could finally relax his entire body. With this, Erika was exhausted from fighting this long. Only Marie was still full of energy, eagerly rushing over. Total landslide victory. Right? Will didn't hold back his praise for the girls. Everyone's coordination was great. Erika still looked somewhat terrified. Good thing we managed to pull through. But Will remained worried. It's still not over. The others are still at a different spot in the forest. A raging tornado is sweeping everything away. Will's group witnessed it as well. He immediately recognized it as Sirius. Thinking it over, Will took the lead. If we head toward that vortex, we should be able to rendezvous with the other teams. At the same time, Sirius was balancing his magic. Suddenly a voice called out, making him look over. Will's voice rang out, Sirius, you okay? Seeing Will's group completely unscathed, Sirius felt relieved that everyone was alright. Not far from them, someone stepping over a pile of monsters spoke up. It was none other than Bode. He looked slightly confused. Something felt off about this formation. Where are the teacher and the others? At that moment, Ren appeared out of nowhere to answer. We're right here. At that moment, Ren appeared out of nowhere to answer. We're right here. He patted Will on the shoulder with satisfaction. You all did great work too. I trusted you guys, and I'm glad nobody got injured. The group beamed with radiant smiles upon receiving the praise. Bode cut in to remind them of another detail. The atmosphere feels like everything's done and dusted, but aren't we still missing someone? Hearing that, Will observed his surroundings again. That's right. Veronica and Bode still have a lot of loose ends. I'm not too worried about her, but we can't just retreat without saying anything. Ren immediately offered a plan, then I'll watch over the remaining students. Those who can manage on their own can split up and search, right? He seemed to agree strongly. Right, Sirius, you're next assigned to Will go search. The two young men immediately acknowledged the command. Yes, sir, understood. A short while later, Will was on his mission to find the missing person. I'm reinforcing my hearing to sense the presence of living creatures. Suddenly a sound rang in his ear, but he wasn't proficient enough to distinguish it yet, so he had to search manually. Looking in the direction of the sound, he spotted Veronica's back. Found her. Good, looks like she's safe. Will quickly called out, Veronica. Teacher, she was currently holding a glowing red stone in her hand. Hearing the voice, Veronica slowly turned her head. The moment he saw it, Will's face darkened. He thought to himself, could this be related to the Crimson Moon? Up ahead, she quickly tucked the stone away into her pocket. Frowning, Veronica asked Will, what are you doing here? He hadn't even gathered his wits yet, and then he remembered the main issue. What am I doing? Ah, I was looking for the professor. The monsters went berserk, so field training's probably over. But strangely, she brushed past him coldly. Is that so? Then let's head back. Noticing something unusual, Will immediately called out after her. Wait, he asked bluntly. What was that stone just now? But Veronica answered dismissively, nothing. But Will pressed on, you say it's nothing? Furthermore, what have you been doing all this time, abandoning the other students like that? The more he asked, the more anxious he grew, his body beginning to tremble. Please answer me. Veronica was brought to a halt by those words. She lowered her voice, brimming with murderous intent. Sorry, but it seems I didn't choose the right method. Veronica's gaze revealed unmistakable threat. It would be best if you kept quiet about this. Even Will himself didn't know how things ended up like this. But in the end, she turned and walked away without making a move. Don't worry, I won't do anything bad. After that, I couldn't say anything more to Professor Veronica. Even if I wanted to keep questioning her, I didn't have the capacity. Above all, I wasn't ready to doubt Veronica, my comrade from my past life. And just like that, the outdoor training came to an end. The next day, returning from the training session, Will was still a jumble of emotions. I barely slept at all last night. This means Professor Veronica is connected to the Red Moon, the Crimson Moon. But while lost in thoughts of his past life, he spotted something ahead. There were two figures whispering suspiciously near the gate, and that person turned out to be none other than the one he had just been thinking about. Seeing Professor Veronica, he quickly and temporarily erased his mana, masking his presence. Will hugged the corner of the wall, turning on the eavesdropping feature so he wouldn't get caught. The man standing opposite Veronica asked quietly and solemnly, Yes, I've received your request to leave the academy. Where do you plan to go? But she only gave a curt reply, personal business. Will's brain went into overdrive. Personal business outside the academy probably has something to do with that red stone. Thinking that, he made up his mind, looks like I have no choice but to tail her. Veronica left the academy shortly after. Will trailed right behind her like a pro. Will suddenly felt like he was rushing things. He had just followed her without thinking things through, lost in thought, and in the blink of an eye, Veronica was nowhere to be seen. If I guessed wrong, I'm just a stalker. Memories of his past life came flooding back. Will was so hung up on the fear of being misunderstood. Especially when there was a chance to learn about that tragedy. He swore to himself to clear Veronica's name, but something unfamiliar made Will look around in confusion. Anyway, this is the first time I've been back here since my past life. After I graduated from the Healing Academy, monsters went on a massive rampage. I was assigned all over the battlefields. I'm pretty sure I dropped by this town back then. As he was thinking, he immediately stopped to look at Veronica. If I remember correctly, she was just buying bread at a small bakery. Memories of his past life returned, just like when she was holding a piece of bread in her hand. He looked at it, his heart blooming with joy. Honey bread? Without waiting, Will put it in his mouth to taste. This supreme delicacy made his eyes light up. So good. Veronica agreed as well. This place is really famous. Will seized the chance to strike up a conversation. I'm from the countryside, so I almost never buy food like this. You were born into a merchant family in the city, so you must have a refined palate for this kind of stuff, right? Veronica calmly replied, That's right, but it's not really because of my background. My rule is that whenever I see a bakery, I just have to drop in. This remark made Will even more curious. A rule? Veronica didn't hide it anymore. She slowly recounted her life story. From the trading trips with my parents until I grew up and fought across various battlefields, I've met a lot of people. Her gaze suddenly held many complex thoughts, and I almost never met them a second time. Even if I did meet them again, they had changed so much they were like completely different people. For that very reason, Veronica set a rule for herself. I don't want to have regrets when that happens, so I forbid myself from ever saying the word later. Since that was the case, Will didn't need to hold back either. He blurted out, I see. No wonder you always talk so bluntly that you scare everyone. The recent information surprised her. I didn't expect you to think of me that way. But then Veronica suddenly changed the subject, and besides, I never know when I'm going to die. Will, don't dwell on this too much. Don't say such pessimistic things. But she bluntly denied his words. I'm not pessimistic or planning to go die. I'm just living my life to the fullest in the present. Suddenly her voice softened, and she looked at him with expectation. If so, will you protect me? Will of the past life didn't hesitate to accept. All right, I promise. Back to reality. Thinking back made his heart ache a little. He stood in the middle of the road, tormenting himself. In the end, I still let Veronica die. This time I swear I'll protect her. The more he thought, the more determined Will became. And to make that happen, I need to find out the truth. The proof is right before my eyes. So Will stuck even closer to Veronica. She began walking into a secluded corner behind the building. Seeing her standing in front of a large iron gate made Will even more suspicious. No matter how you look at it, it's sketchy. He couldn't stop worrying inwardly. Will she be alright? Veronica, I need to step up my presence concealment skills.
A moment later, Veronica stepped inside.
Naturally, Will couldn't just stay out. Hiding in a corner of the wall, he heard another person's voice.
We've been waiting for you. A figure in a black cloak standing before her apologized profusely for calling her to such a place. But this was a matter of utmost importance. That person took off their hood to reveal purple hair. It was Anrut. She wore a scheming look. Now, about the item we discussed.
Veronica just silently stared at the opponent. A moment later, she pulled out the red stone, leaving Anrut astonished. This is. She quickly grabbed the stone, but the very next second, she subtly frowned. Anrut raised the stone with delight. This is wonderful.
She then turned around to flatter her. You really do have talent.
Yes, of course. I've always believed so. Perhaps Will was starting to hear the information he wanted.
With this, the greatest wish of our church.
Anrut couldn't help blurting out the plan. We are one step closer to the red moon. That statement made Will's face turn as dark as night.
He instantly pieced together the whole event. I knew it. This really is connected to the red moon and this cult as well. To top it all off, the spell Will was using started running out of time.
Veronica sensed something unusual the very next second.
But only then did she fully realize what was happening. Damn it, my presence concealment skill wore off. Without thinking twice, Veronica grabbed her sword and lunged straight at him. Will was now beyond saving, his eyes wide with absolute terror.
Terrified out of his wits, Will could only shout out loud, Professor Veronica. With a constantly trembling body, she shielded him. You ended up following me after all, huh?
The dragon right before their eyes grew increasingly fierce.
At that moment, footsteps echoed from afar. Didn't I tell you that you had to come alone?
Alrut held the quartz crystal in her hand and said with a hint of regret, I'm sad that you broke our agreement. I honestly thought our cult was about to gain another kindred spirit. Hearing that, Veronica coldly slashed down with her sword. Fair warning, this was just an accident. That attitude prompted her to hurriedly try and smooth things over. Oh my, so I jumped to conclusions.
If that's the case, just eliminate that witness over there, and the cult will gladly welcome you.
Will was startled by those words.
In contrast, Veronica pointed her sword forward and flatly replied, I refuse. I only came here to investigate.
Alrut narrowed her eyes, appraising her. I have no intention of sacrificing my precious student. Seeing the tense situation, he hurriedly stood up. Professor Veronica, I'm sorry, but I need to know what's going on. Veronica immediately turned around to cut him off. It's my fault for not explaining sooner.
That day, I sensed something unusual in the forest.
What I found there was a frenzied monster, and its blurry eyes flashed with a cold light. Right before her eyes beneath the grass, lay a solitary red stone. Back then, Veronica had picked it up. This stone, this feeling. She clenched her fist, channeling a surge of magic into it. When I channeled my mana into it, it emitted a red glow. At that moment, Alrut stepped out as if she had been waiting for a long time. I never expected to find a potential kindred spirit in a place like this. She clasped her hands in a prayer-like gesture. This must be the guidance of the higher-ups and proof of the mission entrusted to me.
Seeing this, Veronica instantly grew wary. Who are you?
Alrut smiled and stepped closer. I'd love to tell you a lot of things, but we have rules. Saying that, she raised a finger and lowered her voice to remind her, if you want to learn about that stone in us, there are 2 conditions. Before she could speak, the opponent went on and on. First, you must keep making it glow to test your qualifications.
Second, you must not tell anyone and must come to the designated place alone to prove your trustworthiness.
Alrut placed a hand over her chest apologetically. I'm sorry for testing you like this.
Veronica's gaze never left her, but I truly hope you'll become one of us.
Returning to the present, she flatly rejected that offer. Therefore, I plan to infiltrate it to investigate undercover. Recalling her attitude toward Will earlier, I thought I made it clear that I wouldn't let anything happen, but she coldly turned and walked away. It's fine, I said I wouldn't let anything bad happen. Hearing that, the person behind her trembled slightly. That alone isn't enough of an explanation.
Veronica softly continued, You're right, I'm sorry. Finally, Will let out a breath, but I'm just glad you're not a bad person. Professor Veronica?
Alrut on the opposite side slowly interrupted. So that means your desire to join the cult was just a lie.
Now I'm even sadder.
As soon as she finished speaking, she dropped the stone she was holding. A sound echoed from the water, accompanied by a regretful voice. I never thought I'd have to eliminate someone so talented.
Will instantly felt a bad omen, the stone you received from Professor Veronica. You threw it into the water?
That stone suddenly flashed with a red light.
Deep down at the bottom, the ogres were gradually awakened.
Even the surrounding beasts seemed controlled by something. The water suddenly surged violently.
A horde of monsters roared as they emerged from below.
By this time, Allroot had quietly retreated to a distance. She clapped her hands and cheered excitedly, tragic and wonderful. Even within the cult, those capable of bestowing such wild power are rare.
Looking at the monsters before him, Leftwell stunned. Water dragon, is it really this strong? Veronica carefully calculated the numbers. 1, 2, 3. 8 of them in total.
Hearing that, he immediately interrupted. I'll handle half.
She resolutely refused and lunged forward. No. Veronica gripped her sword tightly. It's not necessary. Mana radiated from the blade. Veronica spun and slashed forward. Storm Blade Tempest Strike.
A series of sharp slashes from the blade headed straight toward the water dragon.
Will was paralyzed with fear by the sight, as expected of Professor Veronica. At that moment, Veronica's eyes flashed with a sharp glint.
The torso of one water dragon collapsed to the ground.
Seeing that, she leaped back to dodge quickly. Will anxiously ran over to ask, "Are you all right?" Veronica steadied her breathing and replied, "Yes." Looking at the twitching body, she was briefly startled. No way, it took that hit head-on and it's still alive? No matter how strong its regeneration ability is, how can it die instantly after being decapitated?
The heads grew back very quickly, terrifying the two of them, and it even healed from that. No healing magic can do that.
At this point, Will also drew his dagger, preparing for battle. Something's not right. Could it be? A water dragon suddenly lunged to attack him.
It plunged its head down toward the ground.
Will quickly dodged. He spun around and slashed with the dagger in his hand.
The slash suddenly stopped against the creature's hide.
Will trembled as he tried to pull the dagger out.
I knew this mushy body was suspicious. He immediately wrapped his arms tightly around its body.
Then he shouted out a reminder, "Professor Veronica, I have a trick I want to try. Please step back." Veronica didn't waste words and backed away. "I understand, but don't overdo it." Will utilized physical enhancement, releasing his limits. He said loudly, "Just overdoing it a little bit."
His feet planted firmly into the ground. His fingers dug tightly into the water dragon's scales. Right after that, Will hoisted it up, revealing a giant ogre. "Come out already, hurry up."
Only then did Veronica completely see through it. She had thought its head was cut off and yet it still wouldn't die. Looking at the ogre before her made her shudder slightly. Turns out that wasn't a head, it was a leg. The giant entity that had just appeared was actually a mollusk monster. Ogre to do Gakko.
Familiar footsteps echoed once more. So you saw through the truth behind that dragon in the blink of an eye.
Allroot placed a hand over her chest and sighed. Fantastic. Well, actually, not fantastic at all.
Saying that, she raised her voice. The cult doesn't seek combat ability.
If I can't wipe you out here, it'll be troublesome.
Then Allroot slowly took out an object. At this rate, I'll be going against the cult's will. The mysterious cult member Allroot pulled out a scepter and declared, "Therefore, I, Allroot, shall take it upon myself to resolve this."
Will seem to have planned ahead. "Professor Veronica, could you handle that monster for me?"
Recalling her moves from earlier, he explained that her magic sword would deal with that mushy body much more effectively than his method. Veronica still seemed uneasy, but she agreed. "Just don't go getting your student into danger."
Will suddenly grabbed her hand. A surge of power from his body quickly transferred over, enhancing her physical abilities.
"Finished," he smiled, and said, "I'll be right back after taking him down."
Veronica was stunned by the parting words. "Until then, make sure you're careful."
The corners of her mouth curved up slightly as she muttered, "I sure have a bold student." Immediately after, Veronica gripped her sword and stepped forward. "Fine, but you need to be careful about one thing." She turned back and whispered something very quietly. "That guy is probably..."
Will's eyes widened in shock. "No way."
Hearing that, Veronica reminded him, "You're the one who proved it's not impossible."
Understanding immediately, he dashed off. "Got it." Allroot stood there calmly before him. "That was fast." The corners of her mouth curled into a smug smile. "Then I suppose I will too." By now, Will was ready to swing his blade. Allroot easily blocked the attack instantly. A brief shock flashed through his heart. He blocked it. Seeing him hacking away frantically, Allroot looked excited. "Looks like you have amazing talent too." Her gaze flickered to the side. Right after that, both of them temporarily halted their attacks. Allroot touched a cut on her face. "I got grazed." Her finger gently smeared the fresh blood. "That hurts. So a wave of power radiating from my fingertips allows me to heal myself, you see." At that moment, Veronica suddenly approached. "That stone has passive mana flowing through it with a wavelength identical to offensive magic. I used the opposite method, but in other words, he is. Seeing the wound gradually heal, she instantly realized, just like you, a battle healer. That information left Will momentarily stunned. You figured out a way to fight using healing magic on your own? Allrut raised her head high and explained, of course not. How could someone like me come up with something like that? The scepter in her hand emitted a light. Even someone like me. Allrut flicked her hand to the side, and the ground immediately exploded. Is capable of doing this thanks to the cult's teachings. Will's gaze was glued to the scepter, so it existed back then. A combat method designed for healers. Remembering how much he had blamed himself in the past, I should have fought with my own hands. Now Will tremblingly gripped the hilt of his dagger. Just how far have those bastards advanced? In front of him, Allrut continued, on that note, it seems you already had the talent from the start. I'm quite jealous. Thinking of a mysterious individual, she let out a low, cold laugh. I really want you to meet him. Saying that, Veronica excitedly asked instead, what do you think? Are you interested in the cult? Will angrily interrupted, are you kidding me? He clenched his fists and said in a low voice, I will never become one of you. Will's eyes suddenly flashed with a red light. Even if I'm reincarnated, never. A streak of light flashed right past Allrut. Energy gradually surged from her body. How regrettable. As soon as she finished speaking, she gathered momentum and lunged forward. Allrut swung her scepter. Her mouth curled into a sly smile. Then I suppose I'll have to eliminate you after all. Will gritted his teeth to block the sudden attack. He trembled as he countered the opponent's sheer physical strength. Physical enhancement is pretty powerful when used. Will thought of their mysterious demeanor along with the red stone from earlier, the heretical cult, the bodies and energies of the two individuals in opposing states. His pupils flashed, healing magic and offensive magic. There are too many things I don't understand. Allrut in front of him was still frantically looking for a fight, but all I need to do is interrogate this guy about everything and that's it. He gritted his teeth and used his strength to push the opponent back. The sudden burst of power helped Will fling her away. Then maybe I can avoid that tragedy. Seizing the opportunity, he quickly spun around. Will delivered a kick straight into Allrut. Taken by surprise by the counterattack, she was pushed far back. In contrast, she still grinned excitedly. At this rate, it looks like I might lose. At that moment, Allrut suddenly raised the scepter in her hand high. But I have the heretical cult backing me up. The red stone immediately emitted a glow. Physical enhancement. Allrut's pupils instantly shifted to a red light. One of her arms immediately grew monstrously large. Veins began to bulge across her cheekbones from the sheer power. Though her body was transformed, Allrut cheered with delight. Wonderful. Will already had a bad feeling about this. This thing clearly went far beyond the normal physical enhancement of healing magic. Then he loudly demanded, who taught you that kind of magic? Hearing that, Allrut respectfully placed a hand over his chest. It's all thanks to the teachings of the cult. Remembering when she stood blankly among the crowd. Up until then, I had just lived carelessly without caring about anything. Allrut flusteredly tended to his wounds amidst curses. I was hired as a healer by a certain magic squad, only knowing how to blindly follow the orders of some arrogant guy. Those days were so boring. Saying this, she let out a self-deprecating laugh. If you're also a healer, there will come a day you understand. The opponent's words reminded him of Ulpus's group, that this world is full of people who aren't worth saving. The red stone was then handed over to her. The cult has granted me strength and enlightenment. The more Allrut spoke, the more excited he became. Since then, my life has finally started to shine. Will gripped his dagger tightly, countering, I don't know what you've realized, but what you're doing is wrong. Saying that, he couldn't help shouting, at this rate, a lot of people are going to lose their lives. Allrut waved his hand to block the attack. He himself remained calm. Even so, it doesn't matter at all. The moment he closed in, she whispered, because the cult said it's fine. Right after that, Allrut swung his hand and blew him away toward the wall. A mouthful of blood spewed from Will's mouth. At this moment, she walked over step by step, smiling as if justice had triumphed. Will lowered his head in silence, not answering. Just because of someone too empty. In his mind, he suddenly thought of his dear ones, his master. Teacher Veronica. Could it be that so many people had to die at this guy's hands? Will clenched his teeth in frustration. Seeing this, Allrut's expression froze for a moment. He clutched his injured arm and slowly stood up, astonishing her. You can still stand up? Allrut's eyes widened in horror. But with those injuries, a flow of energy gradually accumulated around his arm. The wounds on it healed instantly. Allrut couldn't help but wonder, you healed that wound immediately? What kind of recovery power is that? At this moment, Will held his head and said in a low voice, "I won't forgive you." He pushed back his bangs to reveal sharp eyes. "I'll make you pay with a pain worse than death." Seeing this, Allroot angrily rushed forward. "This time I'll wipe you out immediately so you don't have a chance to recover." Will swung his fist up with immense power. The overwhelming pressure caused the entire space to shake considerably. Allroot momentarily couldn't withstand that attack. The corners of his mouth curved up. Will let out a challenge. "Is that all it takes for you to run out of breath?" He spun around and threw his fist again. "I'm not done beating you yet." Allroot's eyes widened, revealing clear terror. Too fast. Instantly, she took a punch from him. Bright red blood continuously gushed from her nose and mouth. Allroot was sent flying several meters away. Afterward, she lay motionless on the ground. Seeing this, Will slowly walked over. "Passed out already? I'll deal with you later." Only then did he suddenly remember. Ah, right. Teacher Veronica. Right before his eyes, Veronica was fighting an ogre. Her eyes flashed with a cold glint. Just a single sword swing sliced off the beast's tentacles. A powerful surge of energy radiated outward. Veronica slowly sheathed her sword. Right after that, the finely chopped flesh immediately fell down. She smiled and turned toward him. "Did you take care of your side too?" Veronica glanced into the distance and continued. "That thing had high regenerative abilities, so it took a little time." Will secretly understood in his heart, turns out the monster was the tougher opponent? As expected of Veronica, he slowly turned his head. Then, the two of them stepped forward and lightly tapped Allroot's face. The moment she opened her eyes, she was met with Will's radiant smile. "Now, spill everything." He used force to press Allroot down tightly, leaving her in pain before she could recover her senses, and a sharp blade was already pressed against Allroot's neck. She was about to be buried and was still stubborn. "Don't make such a scary face," Will only coldly replied. "That depends on you." He bluntly interrogated her. "I have a lot of things I want to ask. But what is the cult? What is its goal?" Allroot only answered vaguely. A follower is not allowed to disclose information to outsiders. More surprisingly, she suddenly grabbed the knife and continuously muttered crazy words. "Always dedicate your life to the cult." Then she acted like a madman, stabbing herself. Long live the cult. That suicide attempt left Will stunned, unable to believe his eyes. Allroot's eyes bulged from the recent pain. Even in the eternal realm, she still harbors such obsession. "I take my own life to protect the secrets of the cult." What a perfect follower. With this, my soul will be guided to the world that Lord Laos always wished for. Until the moment she departed, Allroot still wore a satisfied smile. But suddenly Allroot slowly woke up, feeling her mind strangely clear. She wanted peace even in poverty. "These are my wounds, they're gone." Allroot felt increasingly bizarre. She clearly stabbed her own throat. The agonizing feeling of the cold blade slicing through her throat and the hot blood gushing out was real. Unexpectedly, Will also confirmed that she had ended her own life. "I'm surprised you killed yourself. I underestimated your faith." He smiled provocatively. "But I healed you." Allroot couldn't believe it, continuously denying it. "That's impossible. I should have died almost immediately." Will didn't hesitate to explain. "If it's almost, that means you didn't die immediately." "I can heal that." Allroot flatly refused to believe it. "That's impossible for an ordinary healer." "Since you put it that way, let me make it clear. I'm not ordinary. Later on, I'll become the best healer in the world." Will continued his interrogation. "Did you realize? If I can heal someone on the verge of death, it means I can torture you right up to the edge of death." Hearing that, Allroot instantly fell silent. As she realized the severity, her gaze gradually descended into panic, and Will pressed his advantage, wearing a vile smile. "Well, are you ready to talk?" Fear was plastered across Allroot's face. "No way, at this rate I have no other choice but to talk." But the very next second, her pupils constricted as if hypnotized. She was pulled into a mysterious space, with urges ringing continuously in her ears. "Die for it." Allroot's face clearly showed panic. Suddenly, her tears fell in torrents onto the ground. Will's expression also changed rapidly in an instant. Allroot trembled in agony, her eyes rolling back. Veronica quickly sensed something was wrong. "Back off, Will. Something's not right." Will quickly let go of her and retreated backward. In the blink of an eye, her entire head and limbs evaporated into thin air. The two standing on this side widened their eyes in witness. Looking closely at the ground,
Allroot had turned into a mummified corpse. Will's eyes widened as he hurriedly ran over.
What? He immediately healed her. Wait, don't die. Seeing his efforts, Veronica could only feel helpless.
Will also stopped his hands and began to analyze. Her vitality vanished in a split second. Some kind of curse, and an extremely powerful one at that.
Will still had many questions. Who's behind this guy? Veronica immediately asked him at that moment. Will, are you okay?
Will replied with a hint of regret.
I'm fine.
But this guy, only then did he feel a sense of remorse.
This should have been an opportunity to gather information. It's my fault for coming alone. Sorry, but she had a generous heart and didn't hold it against him. As long as the students are safe, that's enough.
Veronica spoke up with a gentle smile.
Let's head back to the academy. On the way back, Will kept rambling on.
The red stone was destroyed.
In the end, we didn't find out anything.
Veronica maintained her composure, explaining one point after another.
The cult, the red stone that makes monsters ferocious. Just knowing these things exist is already a harvest. You can't be on guard against things you don't even know exist.
Naturally, he had a similar prediction.
That's right, you're right. Compared to my past life, I'm definitely making progress. At this rate, definitely.
Even so, Will still had too many unanswered questions.
But I wonder.
Seizing this opportunity, Veronica also opened up.
Ultimately, I'm really glad I joined the field training.
She further revealed a secret.
Actually, I insisted on joining the field training because I was worried about you. Our school is the only one with 2 teachers accompanying us, right? Finally, some of Will's puzzles were unraveled. So teacher Veronica only realized the existence of that thing in this life. It's never enough, he continued to ask. Come to think of it, I've always wanted to ask, how did you come up with the idea of using static mana to attack? Teacher Veronica honestly recounted. I come from a merchant family.
Probably because I had many opportunities to interact with both healers and battle mages, but his thoughts were a bit different. If you could think of it from just that, I feel magic research should have progressed much further. Hearing this, Veronica was equally surprised.
Is that so? Well, who knows?
Suddenly Veronica remembered something important,
but she vaguely sensed a familiarity.
She felt as though someone had told her the exact same thing when she was young. While Will was still deep in thought, they arrived in front of the bakery.
Could that person be connected to the cult? Veronica wanted to drop by again.
Will brushed aside these complicated matters.
Do you want to buy some bread?
Will's soul seemed to be pulled back after that question.
He nodded happily and agreed immediately. Yes,
and so, the big mysteries still remained.
I've gained new strength to avoid destruction. I got scolded for going out without permission. Elsewhere in the room, the atmosphere was strangely silent. Ulpus sat neatly at the desk, but seemed to have passed away.
There was a clear bite mark left on his neck.
At that moment, another voice echoed. That hard-working guy died? And now it's come looking for me again.
This girl carried a snake with her, her mouth continuously accepting the orders.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
She held the red stone in her hand, looking at it with fascination.
If that's the order from the cult.
Several days had passed since the battle with the cult.
At this time, Will and Veronica were sparring. He repeatedly asked about the information from the other day. Did you find out anything about the cult? She quickly replied. Not much. Despite being called a cult, they don't seem to be making any notable moves. Will clearly expressed his regret. If only I could go down to town to gather information.
She showed her strictness. Students need a permit to leave the grounds.
Veronica further emphasized that a student's duty is to study.
Will smiled with confidence.
I know, but I hate sitting around waiting. So I came up with an idea.
As he spoke, he poured all his strength into the balls of his feet and accelerated,
dodging Veronica's attack.
Before she knew it, Will had closed in on her from behind. I was planning to go find Professor Wren, the top expert on monsters.
Thought it'd be easy. Turns out I was easily blocked by Veronica after all.
He had intended to use the off-campus study program, but she maintained her stance.
I'm pretty sure you need stellar theoretical grades to register for that. Saying that, she swung her sword, causing Will to hurriedly block. Do you even meet the qualifications? He confidently flicked her away to the back. You don't have to worry about that. Will started showing off. My theoretical grade this semester is the highest in the entire year. Hearing that, Veronica withdrew her sword and let out a sigh of relief. Having an outstanding student like you makes me proud too. You've become more reliable, haven't you? But he still realized he needed to know his limits. I'm still trying hard, but I've started to realize how much you were holding back. That's good. Right at that moment, Veronica offered a reward. If that's the case, it's time for you to choose your core. He still looked clueless. Core, she seriously analyzed. You have the creativity to flexibly turn healing magic into offensive moves. But if you find your forte and hone it, your combat style will become stable, and the variety in your choices will shine even more. But Will replied thoughtlessly. Then I'll choose Professor Veronica. Veronica re-emphasized the issue. What I can teach you is magical swordsmanship. Are you really okay with that? You don't have to rush your decision. Saying that, she quickly made a suggestion. For now, we should go see Professor Ren. Will finally had the realization dawn on him. I understand. Afterward, he began his journey. I've arranged to meet Professor Ren, and the weather is very nice even though it's far from town like this. This trip was even better than he expected. A perfect day for off-campus learning. Ren was a famous monster researcher even in my past life. His achievements were so great that he was awarded a medal by the kingdom. The more Will thought about it, the more he admired him. Truly a scholar of monsters, he lived so far away from residential areas, but his nature was far more curious than that. I wonder if he's ever been attacked by monsters. Suddenly, Will sensed danger and instinctively looked up. From above, a barrage of huge boulders was cascading down like a waterfall. Will quickly brought his mind back to reality. There are still dangers like this out here. He exerted his utmost speed to sprint across and dodge each boulder. But suddenly, a boulder targeted him specifically and came hurtling straight at him. Will quickly channeled all his mana into his palm and executed a few hacking motions, shattering the boulder into many small pieces. Finishing up, he calmly composed himself, but it seemed it wasn't over yet. He continued to sense something hurtling toward him at high speed. It was a dart. Will successfully caught it. He carefully inspected it. An arrow? Right at that moment, two other people approached. Sorry. The black-haired guy gave a flimsy excuse. A monster trap just misfired. Will didn't want to deal with scumbags and turned to leave. Misfired? I almost died. Do you guys know that? But the black-haired guy still teased. You're still alive, aren't you? The blonde youth seemed more polite. We're hunters around here. People don't usually pass through here. We'll be more careful next time. Hearing that, Will just sighed in frustration and continued on. As long as you guys learn your lesson. We're in a hurry, so please don't do that again. But it turned out to be just a facade. The blonde guy began to reveal his vile nature. I've learned my lesson. The two scumbags plan to play dirty and gang up on Will. Next time we'll definitely do it right. But he calmly dropped down and dodged their attack. He glanced over to carefully observe. Seeing things go smoothly, he kicked both guys straight down the cliff. The tenacious youths desperately clung to the cliff edge to hold on. Will looked at them with contemptuous eyes. The bracelets and rings didn't fit properly at all. Without thinking much, he casually made a remark. Will's voice suddenly turned cold as he slowly walked toward them. Funny thing. Lately I've been thinking about this too. Whether there's an effective way to reform bad guys. While pinching the blonde guy's mouth, he came up with a new initiative. So Will looked at them burning with killing intent. What about brainwashing? The blonde guy's whole body began to tremble. The black-haired brat wasn't done yet and stubbornly chimed in. Stop, Will bluntly declared and threw him down to the ground. I'm not stopping. His smile right now was enough to scare the black-haired guy to death. Not stopping. I gave you guys a second chance. Saying that, he turned back to pinch the other guy's mouth. The black-haired guy's whole body started shaking. More importantly, the bag these two carried seemed to be trapping a living creature.